Okay, I'm going to call our regular scheduled meeting for June 8th to order. Roll call again, Bonnie. We have all of us present. We're going to move on to B, Pledge of Allegiance. I want to introduce Sharon Steele, the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity, and Christy Pennington. Christy, I don't have your title. Support member? Board member. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So Habitat for Humanity DeKalb is a nonprofit organization that helps families build and improve places to call home. They were incorporated in 1988 at the behest of former DeKalb County CEO Manuel Maloof. That's an old school name. Who saw the need for better, more affordable home ownership options in the county. They believe affordable housing, home repairs, and home ownership education play a critical role in strong and stable communities, and they envision a world where everyone has a decent place to live. So Sharon, I'm so glad that you're here. And Sharon, they're located in Tucker, in downtown Tucker, if you don't know that. And Sharon and I are leadership DeKalb buddies. So yeah, so I'm glad that you are here. And we're going to have you all come on up and lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. All right. Now we are going to move on to public comment. In public comment, we set aside 20 minutes for public comment. Each person who comes to speak has 2 minutes each. You can talk about anything you want, but remember, it is not a back and forth with council or myself. And also, we had public hearings tonight, so in case you're confused, you can still come up and speak about what you want to speak about. But later on, we have a lot of rezoning public hearings, and you'll have time, during that time as well to address us. And also, if you signed up by mistake, thinking you had to take attendance, and we call your name, you can just say pass, and that's fine. Just give us a wave. All right, Bonnie, you ready?
I'm ready.
Thank you.
We have Ted Fisher.
All right, you sure? All right, thank you.
Keith McGavey.
McGahey.
Thank you for letting me speak again. I know we're having a lot of talk about trails around Tucker. Why in the world would we want to build a trail on top of a sewer line from Calvin Road to the Peters community? That's a sewer line we're following, people. It used to be pretty bad to walk up and down that sewer line. They've already cut the trees years ago, I know for a fact. That water's not the cleanest in the world either. That's a lot of runoff in that water. That's not a safe area in that area. There has been shootings over there, I know for a fact. It's a rough area, people. And the police has already told me years ago they're not going back in those woods. When they robbed Wendy's years ago, they wouldn't go in the junkyard behind my house. They waited for the perpetrator to leave. It's not a safe area to put a trail through there. I know what I'm talking about. I don't know everything, like I said a while ago, but I know it's not safe. I know of a house right there in front of Chick-fil-A. That was where a drive-by shooting was at before they built Chick-fil-A. You still ride by and see the bullet holes in the house. There was a guy that got killed on the duplex down in there years ago. Last year, the Amazon driver got shot at over there. It was on the internet. Why you want to put a trail on a sewer line? Waste a lot of taxpayers' money. The sewer line's going to have to be replaced one day. That sewer line was actually put in when Tucko came to Tucker about 1949, 1950. I know right now Smoke Rise hadn't even got sewer lines down in there in Smoke Rise, but that sewer line was put in many years ago. Let's think about a red light or something, safe going up 78 highway where the traffic doesn't back up instead of putting something unsafe, It's not safe over there, I'm telling y'all. I know what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Bonnie?
Beverly Williams.
evening again. I'm still concerned about the millage rate, but now I'm concerned about your budget. Because when you all was in council, except for the new mayor, the budget didn't add up then, because when I did the numbers, you was already $10 million in the hole. And so I'm looking at these numbers again, and they look similar to what they was when you gave this to us several months ago before the new mayor arrived. And so as residents, I think all of us need to, for you all and the, whoever prepared this, which is John McHenry, you all need to give a class. You need to break this down because these numbers don't add up. And you need to provide us for every invoice, for everything that you're talking about, and this cost expense, because I would like to see it for myself. And I shouldn't have to do an open records request for each and every document. You should have that illustrated, and John McHenry should be the one briefing us on this budget and last year's budget, because the numbers don't add up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lois Schingler.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm here for my 2 minutes of really good news. I'm a longtime resident of Tucker and have a business as well as a home here. And let me tell you that once again, Peter and Paul's Place, our organization for adults with disabilities, finished its last art class until next September. And we had just a wonderful reception again at Tucker Recreation Center. And so once again, let me tell you that when there are some really good things going on in Tucker, and one of them is the wonderful staff and opportunities that you have at Tucker Recreation Center. They're so welcoming to our community. Next thing we're going to be doing is a dance in August, and then we will pick up with the art classes in September. And we have this incredible theater program that we've started, and we had our first class, and we are going to be putting a showcase on in August. So I think it's like the first week at 1st of August. So I'll let you know more about that later. Other hat real fast, Tucker Art Alliance is just really growing. We have gotten to the point now where we're defining what we're actually doing, and we'll be approaching all the different organizations in Tucker to talk about what we want to see in the arts community and what they want to see in the arts community. So any questions you might have, please direct them to us. And again, thank you all for the support you give us, both for people with disabilities and also with the arts community.
Thank you, Bonnie. That's the end of the list. We have 14 minutes and 52 seconds. Anyone else?
Well, this is a little bit backwards, but mayor and the council members that passed the non-discrimination ordinance, I think it's called something else actually, 2 years ago, I guess it is now. I want to thank you for that vote. And I just want to remind people that even though people in Tucker are protected, and in 4 urban counties, I believe in Savannah and Athens, there's still about 80% of the population in this state that is not protected. And that's only going to change when minds or people are changed under the Gold Dome. So if you have friends in other parts of the state, those that might be listening or watching, I know people are from other parts of the state, so you have family and friends, encourage them to vote accordingly when they're considering, electing or re-electing their and my second item today is on the budget, and I can't stay for the budget. I just went through and I looked at big ticket items and whatnot, and I won't mention the district number, but there is $877,000 for redoing tennis courts in one of our districts, and I want you to look seriously at that item. We have the trail plan. And the trail plan serves everybody in the city. And I would much rather see that money go towards, things that, a trail that can unify and bring, get people around the city, more so than one district. And I don't know if you keep score about where SPLOST money and other money goes in the city in terms of districts, but you might consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. We got about 12 minutes. Anybody else?
Matt Robbins, Idle Hour Drive. A couple things. I just want to acknowledge that there is a national holiday this week, and we in Tucker anticipated that way ahead of time with Juneteenth. And we want to acknowledge the fact of the history beyond everything and the courage that people had and versus the stupidity that some others had, that we honor people and honor the fact that we can pledge our support to people. Second thing, voting. Early voting this week. It'll be over pretty soon, next week. And it's important that we pay attention to that. And then the third and fourth thing is we will see each other on July 3rd with the celebration. And really wanted to thank the board, the staff for what happened Friday. It was beautiful, phenomenal, and great music. And then the funny part, as I said to somebody, on PBS the next day, it was honoring Fleetwood Mac. Thank you again.
We'll take credit for that timing, right? Take credit for that timing. Anyone else? All right. I'm going to close public comment and go to mayor's opening remarks. We've got some proclamations, exciting proclamations tonight, but I do want to do opening remarks first. So I want to say happy belated birthday to Councilwoman Alexis Weaver. You celebrated last week. I hope you got to celebrate. Very good. I want to say congratulations to Councilwoman Kara Schroeder, who has been accepted to the Atlanta Regional Commission's Regional Leadership Institute. Very exciting. You'll start that in the fall, I think, in August. Matthew Lee, the Tucker Northlake CID director, and I are recent graduates of that program as well. So congratulations. And then I want to congratulate Councilwoman Virginia Reese and Derek, our assistant city manager, who's not here, but they graduated from Leadership DeKalb this past week, and that's another big deal. So Tucker is well represented across the region in many different leadership programs and building those connections. And just want to say congrats to everybody. And I know we will have some more announcements coming on some folks joining other organizations real soon. So appreciate you all. I'm proud of you. We had our first Friday concert, as former councilman Matt Robbins said. It was amazing. We had a lot of fun, a good time. Thank you to everybody who helped put that on. The city of Tucker approved 12 new occupational tax certificates in the month of May. 9 are commercial-based businesses and 3 are home-based. Here's some upcoming events. We never slow down here in the city of Tucker. The May Tucker Cruise-In is this Saturday on Main Street from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Our Juneteenth Jubilee is this Saturday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Northlake Mall. And Camille is here. Camille is the organizer of that. So thank you, Camille. We have a rescheduled movie on the green. I'm hoping the weather for Thursday is better than this. It's the Indiana Jones, the Raiders of the Lost Ark is this Thursday. I believe that starts at 7. The next movie on the green is Zootopia 2. That will be June 18th. Bring a blanket, chairs, food and friends, food trucks and drinks are available for purchase. And the next Saturday, June 20th, is Perk Up with Parks at Tucker Recreation Center at 9 a.m. And as you know, we have a lot of coffee shops, so perk up, bring your coffee, and I think we provide it too. So that'll be a good time. So now we're going to have 3 different proclamations. We're going to move down, all of us, to the front to do some presentations. Amy's broken.
I know, I noticed it.
A proclamation of the city of Tucker designating June 2026 as Tucker Pride Month. Whereas the city of Tucker, in conjunction with Tucker Pride, celebrates the diversity, strength, and contributions of our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual LGBTQIA+ community. And whereas June is recognized globally as Pride Month to commemorate the 1969 Stonewall Uprising in New York City, which catalyzed the modern movement for LGBTQIA+ civil and human rights. And whereas celebrating Pride Month promotes visibility, acceptance, and vital support networks for LGBTQIA+ individuals and their families. And whereas the city of Tucker recognizes the importance of fostering community where young people can grow up knowing they are supported, respected, and empowered to express themselves authentically. And whereas Tucker Pride, a 501c3 organization, seeks to build an inclusive Tucker where everyone feels welcomed, valued, and empowered to contribute to the community. And whereas Tucker Pride supports the Tucker community through educational outreach, social programming, youth engagement, and community building initiatives that encourage connection and belonging. And whereas the city of Tucker and Tucker Pride are committed to creating a sense of community in Tucker, working together with our LGBTQIA+ families, friends, allies, local businesses, and organizations to celebrate our diversity, foster inclusivity, build mutual respect, and strong, lasting, beneficial relationships. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the mayor and city council of the city of Tucker, we do hereby designate the month of June 2026 as LGBTQIA+ Tucker Pride Month and encourage residents, businesses, and community organizations to join in celebrating the diversity that strengthens our community. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Tucker, Georgia to be affixed this 8th day of June 2026. Then we got some other folks who also want to come up for this picture, so we're going to do a picture. George, Scott, come on out. Richard, come on.
Come on now.
You're in the back. You're in the back.
They're going.
All right. Naturally, lean your head. All right, very good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so now I would ask Camille, do you want to come up? A proclamation designating June 19th, 2026 as Juneteenth National Independence Day in the city of Tucker. Whereas Juneteenth, also known as Freedom Day, Jubilee Day, Liberation Day, and Emancipation Day, commemorates June 19th, 1865, when news of freedom finally reached enslaved African Americans in Galveston, Texas, more than 2 years after the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation. And whereas Juneteenth stands as the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States and serves as a powerful reminder of freedom, perseverance, resilience, and hope. And whereas Juneteenth provides an opportunity for residents to celebrate freedom, learn from our nation's history, honor those who endured injustice, and reaffirm our shared commitment to building a welcoming community where all people are treated with dignity and respect. And whereas the city of Tucker recognizes and appreciates the efforts of community organizations and volunteers who bring residents together through educational programs, celebrations, and events that strengthen our community connections. And whereas the Citizens for Family Activities in Tucker and Frontline Community Service continue to foster community through the annual Tucker Juneteenth Jubilee, centered around faith, family, freedom, friends, and fortitude. And whereas the city of Tucker wishes to extend special recognition to Camille Mahdi for her leadership and dedication to helping establish and grow these efforts that bring families and neighbors together in celebration and reflection. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the mayor and city council of the city of Tucker do hereby designate June 19th, 2026 as Juneteenth National Independence Day in the city of Tucker, and encourage our residents to remain committed to fostering a community built upon mutual respect, understanding, opportunity, and unity. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Tucker, Georgia, to be affixed this 8th day of June, 2026. Thank you for all you do. All right, we got one more, so I can get, yeah, come on, Roger, stay down. Okay, we have our Tucker Municipal Court clerks, come on. Then you can go home. All right. All right. This is a proclamation in recognition of Municipal Court Clerks Week, June 8th through 12th, 2026. Whereas the City of Tucker Municipal Court Clerks serve as a critical information resource to judges, solicitors, defense counsel, and defendants, and play a significant role in providing access to justice, preserving public safety, and promoting quality of life in Georgia. And whereas more people encounter municipal court clerks than all other court personnel in Georgia, and the public impression of the entire Georgia judicial system is largely dependent upon the public's experience with the municipal courts. And whereas the City of Tucker municipal court clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all, and in further service are certified and trained in first aid, CPR, and AED. And whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of our City of Tucker municipal court clerks, Janessa Cefasil, Shikana Cheater, I have a little cheat sheet. Wait today. Anna Truong and Giselle Simmons. All right, very good. So now for their, let it be proclaimed by the mayor and city council of the city of Tucker, the week of June 8th through 12th, 2026 is recognized as Municipal Court Clerks Week. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Tucker to be affixed this 8th day of June, 2026. Thank you for all you do for us. We really appreciate you. And I know it's not easy. So, thank you. He's our city attorney. All right. All right. Very good. All right. Now we're going to move on to F, approval of the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda. Second.
All right, any discussion on approval of the agenda? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? All of us, Bonnie, thank you. All right, now G, consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor? All right, that's all of us, Bonnie. All right, we're going to move on to H, public hearings. Bonnie, would you read in H1 for us, please?
We have ordinance O 2026-05-06. It's a second read and public hearing of an ordinance for a special land use permit, SLUP-26-0003, for a drive-through facility at 4453 Hugh Howe Road. Applicant Dale Friedley, Wayner Summers, Inc.
Need of such land use permit for a Whataburger at 4453 Hugh Howe Road. It's the second time we're reviewing this application. This is the maps of the property. You'll see on the left an aerial of the property. It's located off of Hugh Howe Road, just one parcel from Rosser Terrace. The property is currently zoned C1, and it's located in the light industrial character area. This is a Google Street View image of the property. It was previously used as a Wendy's for several decades and has since become vacant. The applicant is looking to remodel the existing building that was constructed in 1977 to convert it to a Whataburger restaurant with a single drive-through. The previous drive-through use did expire as the use was closed for 6 months of non-use, which is why they're here this evening requesting a special land use permit. The proposed hours of operation is 24/7 in order to try to reduce crime and serve their customer base. Looking to maintain the single drive-through lane, but refresh the exterior building materials, demolish the front solarium that everyone is familiar with, the standard Wendy's model, and replace it with open air dining. This will reduce the front setback encroachment on the property. The applicant's also planning to restore the 50-foot rear transitional buffer that is not currently in place at this property. They will be reducing parking spaces and adding tree islands as well as other landscaping in the front. They'll be constructing a new dumpster enclosure further from the residential that complies with our dumpster enclosure regulations. They are also looking to redirect the drive-through speaker away from residential and replace the non-conforming pole signage with a compliant monument sign. So this is a survey of the existing conditions, currently accessed by 2 curb cuts off of Hugh Howe Road. You'll see there's parking and a dumpster in the green area, which is the area of the required dumpster transitional buffer. This is the site plan that was presented to Planning Commission on April 16th. Shows this 2 curb cuts still along Hugh Howe Road with a drive-through access going around the back of the site, incorporation of the transitional buffer, removal of several parking spaces for those tree islands, and more landscaping along the frontage of Hugh Howe Road. The applicant has also added pedestrian connectivity from the public right-of-way to the Wendy's to connect the sidewalk for anyone walking to this establishment, added the street trees and streetscape lighting, and shown the relocated monument sign. These are elevations of the proposed renovation for Whataburger. The applicant, as required, had a neighborhood meeting on February 24th at the Tucker Reed Kofor Library. They mailed the letters to everyone within 500 feet and had 10 people attend, including the applicant team. The comments and questions that they received related to the size and height of the building, the hours of operation, security, the transitional buffer zone, the timeline of the project, the percentage of drive-through business, students as employees, and property taxes. So in terms of the SLUP analysis, drive-through facilities do require a special land use permit in the C1 zoning district to ensure compatibility with surrounding developments and the comprehensive plan. The site was previously operated as a drive-through establishment, but did lose that non-conforming status. The applicant previously wanted to add a second drive-through and expand the operations, but after meeting with the city, decided against it in order to incorporate that required transitional buffer. The applicant did relocate the menu board and dumpster to minimize the impact to adjacent residential and better align the proposal with the objectives of the comprehensive plan. And the use is consistent with the active commercial nature of Hugh Howell Road, which is a transitional area located between downtown Tucker and the Mountain Industrial Boulevard Overlay District. Staff feels that the 24/7 operation is not consistent with the neighboring businesses and residences, but again, the applicant contends that this model will deter crime. There are 3 drive-through restaurants within 500 feet of the parcel, but only one is in the same light industrial character area. The staff is not as concerned about proliferation. The site currently contains 2 curb cuts, which is not ideal for traffic management, but does allow for that large green space between the building and the street. If the proposal was reduced to 1 curb cut, it would require the exit lanes to be located between the building and the street and decrease that green space. Proposal complies with all the supplemental regulations for drive-through facilities. And again, they added the pedestrian walkway that staff previously recommended be added to connect the public sidewalk to the restaurant. Therefore, based on the findings and conclusions in the staff report, we recommend approval with conditions of special land use permit 26-0003. Several conditions, including the site plan that was submitted March 5th, the drive-through windows and lanes comply with all the supplemental regulations, the 5-foot pedestrian path be added to connect the building with the street, the 50-foot transitional buffer be installed per code, the developer install street trees and pedestrian street lighting behind the existing sidewalk, that the owner developer remove the existing ground sign during the renovation process and install new signage compliant with our current sign ordinance. This application went to the Planning Commission a few months ago, where they also recommended approval with staff conditions with no modifications. And that concludes my presentation for the second read.
All right, we'll take questions for Courtney after our public hearing. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing for anybody who's here to speak in favor. Let's see our applicants walking up.
Good evening. My name is Dale Friedley. I'm with Warner Summers Architects here in Atlanta. We are the architect on behalf of Made to Order Holdings, who is the local franchisee for Whataburgers in the state of Georgia. The Made to Order Holdings is, as I said, the local Whataburger franchisee. They strive to embody the Whataburger mission statement of 24 hours of goodness. They do plan to be open 24/7, 364 days per year, but they are closed on Christmas. All of their food is made to order for their customers. Everything is fresh. So as you order it, it's made for you then. There's nothing sitting around just waiting. They also are an active part of the communities that they serve, and this location will provide 60 to 80 jobs, including a student scholarship program. I believe Courtney did a great job of presenting what we have to offer here. Nothing has really changed since our last reading, so I'll reserve the rest of our time to answer questions, but I will introduce Harrison Parker with Made to Order Holdings.
Y'all heard my spiel. I don't think you need to hear it again.
Well, there might be people here who haven't heard.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer any
Yeah.
questions, of course. As Dale said, my name is Harrison Parker. I'm with Made to Order Holdings. We are the local franchisee for Georgia, the entire state of Georgia, for Whataburger. And we are, like I said last time, we've been looking in Tucker since we started. We're super excited about this opportunity and to be in this community and be a part of this community. So thank you for your consideration. And like I said, any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to reserve some time there, maybe, if we need to. Anybody else here to speak in favor of this application? All right, I'll close that portion of the public hearing, and I will open up the public hearing for anybody who's here to speak in opposition. All right, seeing none, I'll close that portion of the public hearing, and we'll go ahead and remember, we're going to do questions first.
Courtney, I was curious if you could go back to the map and just show where the drive-through is. And a couple of people asked me where it was located. Apparently, some of the neighbors were concerned about the noise, and I know you went to special efforts to try to talk through that with the applicant. I was just thinking you could just talk through that a second. Thank you.
Yes, let me see if I can get this mouse to work. So that you would enter on the western curb cut and then go around, and then the menu board ordering box would be here. And then your pickup window would be here. So previously it was located closer to the residential. So this is the survey. This red dot here was the menu board and ordering box. And so it was shifted further away from residential. And then you would exit out from this curb cut, which is the eastern curb cut on Hugh Howell.
All right.
Is this questions just for Courtney or for?
For either.
Okay.
Questions?
Well, one of the things that I thought, I think Councilmember Schroeder was the one that asked this last time, was why Tucker? And so I was just wondering if you could speak to kind of what it is about Tucker that that drew y'all to look at this opportunity.
Especially since so many folks don't want to have a business here anymore.
So we have the Atlanta DMA, which is Fulton County, and it includes 18 counties. And as we started looking around the city of Atlanta and just trying to find different places where we fit, you look at the demographics, and there's all kind of different data we use, right? So population, it's income, traffic, everything. And so when you study those across the state of Georgia, Tucker is a community that fits that what we are looking for. When you take Whataburger across the country, in Texas and Alabama, South Carolina, all these places that Whataburger exists, Tucker fits where Whataburger does well. And so that is obviously a good reason for us to be here. But also just, I mean, I'm born and raised here in Georgia. I know Atlanta well. I went to school at Georgia Tech. And, we've got several people on our team who live in and around this area in DeKalb County. So it's a great place. It's a growing community. And like I said, we're excited to be a part of it.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I have one more.
Okay.
So I know this is a question that has been brought up, which is just, can you speak to the 24-hour model and sort of the security decisions that you all have made as a part of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So like Dale mentioned, 24 hours of goodness is Whataburger's mission statement. And so they have always been, for 75 years, believed that they want to be somewhere that people can go anytime and have a meal, and not just eat food, but have a meal, be served, sit down, have great fresh food any time of day. And so that is their policy across the United States, and we try to follow that. We have seen in a lot of communities, I've stood at this podium and talked about 24 hours. And I can tell you that we now operate 13 restaurants, and we have not had a single issue with security late night. And actually, I'm going to look at you while I say this. In the middle of the night, there's not a whole lot of places that are open for police officers and first responders to go eat. And so Whataburger being one of those few places that it is, we end up with some of our best customers being police officers and first responders. And we're there for them, and we offer them a discount. So remember that. Come see us. And I mean that seriously, though. But it's a place that they know they can go inside and have, a warm cup of coffee any time of day, or a nice meal, whether it be breakfast at 3 o'clock in the morning or, a patty melt. And so we do not see those issues, because a lot of times we have our first responders in the building and we take care of them. So.
All right. Any more questions?
I've got one or two for you, actually. I did not write it in my notes last month, but how many folks do you employ at Whataburger at this location do you expect?
So we will start when we start off, we'll start with between 60 and 80. It can ebb and flow depending on how busy we are.
Mhm.
So if the restaurant stays very busy and does a certain amount of business per week, then we have to staff for those hours. So it's hard to say
Mhm.
full time, and then you have a lot of part time. And we also do like to hire high school students and college students, and so we work with them on part time schedules, and so we end up with a lot of part time employees. So really hard to say exactly. I will tell you that some of our slower stores, we have 40 to 50 employees, and then one of our busier stores, we have close to 100 to operate obviously 24/7.
Okay. And then I'm trying to remember if it was mentioned about, kind of along the lines of council members Schroeder and Weaver, as far as like the location and some of the details that you put into that particular location. Is it my understanding that you usually build from ground up? Like, I am really interested in you coming in and repurposing a block, abandoned property for over 6 months and all that. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this will be our first renovation. So we have several others that we are under contract on, and we're excited about. We think renovations is a great opportunity for us, especially given the market and where costs are. I think renovations are a big piece of what we will do, but our first 13 restaurants were ground up construction. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, can I get it? Oh, go ahead.
Quickly for Courtney, sorry, can you remind me, I already asked last meeting too, the sidewalk regulations for the character area?
I don't have the specific sidewalk width for this section of Hugh Howell, but this section was put in either as a city project or a CID project recently. So it was installed at what would fit in the existing right of way.
Okay.
So not looking to upgrade that with this redevelopment.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So that means because even though they're remodeling the building, they don't have to update the sidewalk or the power lines because everything is up to our current state?
Yes, the city put in the sidewalk to that standard, and so we are not recommending that it be increased.
Okay. All right. I guess just a request for the applicants. I've been doing this every Friday now. I've been walking the city, kind of inventorying our sidewalks and seeing what the state of our city is. If you guys could entertain looking at 6 feet or maybe a little larger. One thing that I've run into lately is that our community has a lot, especially on Lawrenceville Highway, has a lot of people that are on wheelchairs. When there's only 5 feet of sidewalk, what tends to happen is that I have to walk onto the road while I let the wheelchair person pass by. So just a little bit extra breathing room for people to be able to safely traverse in front of the property or even to the property if it's not a major lift in terms of design. Yeah.
We're not adding that as a condition. Okay, I just want to make sure. I saw their faces. Like, wait, last minute condition? Yeah. All right, and again, I think it was the city put those sidewalks in very recent with the CID. I think it was a partnership. Yeah. Okay. So our Tucker North Lake Community Improvement District put those sidewalks in. Okay. All right. Anything else? All right, can I get a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 02026-05-06.
And I second that motion.
Okay, now is there discussion on that motion? Go ahead.
I do want to say that my Texas roots aside, I appreciate the reuse. So I know there's been lots of discussions about drive-throughs and when they feel appropriate and when they don't. And in this case, I think that this is one of the better sort of more thoughtful projects that we could have for the reuse of an existing drive-through. And I do appreciate the thought that's gone behind it, particularly for the specific kind of character area that it falls in. And I'm really excited to get me a Whataburger Jr. That's my babe.
All right.
I'll just say one quick thing. I really appreciated applicant working with staff to bring some of the uniqueness and really giving a feel of Tucker, the connectivity, the extra sidewalk, the outdoor spaces and stuff like that. I feel like they really spent some time with staff working on that.
Go ahead, Roger.
I want to add that these folks, from day one, when they met with District 1 representatives at the very least, have embraced the community for in and of itself. And they even voluntarily dropped one of their SLUP requests for a second drive-through just to make sure they were going to be good neighbors. So they've been incredible to work with all along.
Very good. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor? All right, that's all of us, Bonnie. Thank you. All right, welcome to Tucker. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to H2. Bonnie, will you read that in?
We have ordinance O 2026-06-09. First read and public hearing of an ordinance for a special land use permit, SLUP 26-0004, to allow a child daycare facility for up to 6 children at 2372 Midvale Circle for applicant Jennifer Washburn.
All right.
Good evening again. Here are the maps of this property on Midvale Circle. So again, you'll see an aerial of the existing residential property. Then you'll see a zoning map showing the zoning of R85 and R100, and then the character area map showing the property in the suburban character area. This is a Google Street View image of the existing property as developed. This is a survey and site plan of the property. The larger yellow rectangle is the existing house, and the purple area is the rear yard where the majority of the school will occur. You'll also see a driveway with room to accommodate 3 cars in the driveway at least, and then another 2 in the garage. So the applicant had their required neighborhood meeting on March 25th, and they mailed letters to everyone within 500 feet. The meeting was very well attended, with 17 people in attendance, and concerns and questions included the noise level, drop-off and pickup plans, whether additional structures would be added to the property, if the business would commercialize the neighborhood, what a typical day would look like, and why a SLUP is needed, and how neighbors could vote on the proposal. The applicant also went above and beyond with their engagement and posted the information to 2 social media groups, which garnered a lot of engagement in the community and helped bring people to that neighborhood meeting. So child daycare facilities do require a SLUP in the R100 zoning district to ensure compatibility with surrounding developments and the comprehensive plan. This is similar to a home-based business with customer contact. It's just a different line item in the code. But they would be operating this business in their home. The home would be required to maintain all appearances of residential. They could not have a sign. It cannot be commercialized. They would just be allowed to have up to 6 children come during the day for childcare. The property is approximately ½ an acre, which is adequate in size for the use of an in-home daycare. There is room for sufficient parking for parent drop-off and pickup. There are no adverse impacts anticipated due to the manner of operation or the hours of operation. This would be during the day, would be no different than having a large family or a homeschool operation. Traffic should not be drastically increased along Midvale Circle or the surrounding streets. And the proposal provides an opportunity to serve the surrounding neighbors, which could reduce vehicle travel if people within the neighborhood are using this in-home daycare. The use of an in-home daycare is compatible with surrounding properties and the residential use. Again, it would maintain the residential use and appearance. The applicant will be living in the home, and there'll be no evidence of the home occupation from the public right-of-way. There were no other child daycare facilities located within 1,000 feet of this address, so there's no issues with proliferation or having too many commercialized type uses within a residential area. Proposal complies with all the supplemental regulations within the city of Tucker and will also be required to comply with all the regulations from the state. And the proposed use is in alignment with the objectives of the comprehensive plan, and it would be compatible with the needs of the surrounding neighborhood and the community as a whole. Based upon these findings and conclusions, staff does recommend approval with conditions of the special land use permit. The conditions state that a child daycare facility of up to 6 children would be permitted to operate at 2372 Midvale Circle. The business would have to comply with the supplemental regulations referenced herein, and that all play areas shall be located in the rear yard and enclosed with fencing that meets the requirements from the Georgia Department of Early Child Care and Learning, which is right from the start. The applicant went before Planning Commission, where they also recommended approval with staff conditions. And we're here this evening for a first read. The second read is scheduled for July 13th.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing so we can hear from the applicant. So all those here to speak in favor of the ordinance?
Good evening.
Evening.
My name is Jennifer Washburn. And I live at 2372 Midvale Circle as of a few days ago. 11 years ago, I started my current home daycare, though, which is in Medlock Park in North Decatur. I did that because I have a passion that home-based daycare is good for children. It's good for our families and our neighborhoods. I did not intend to ever leave my preschool there in North Decatur. But one day I was in Tucker and I caught the vision that you all have, that this is a pretty great place. And so my husband convinced me to buy this house. And we are very excited to be here. To date, I've stayed in good standing with Bright from the Start for 11 years, and I have not received any complaints from any of my neighbors. The staff has done a great job of going over the details of the plan. I'm happy to answer any other questions. As you saw, the SLEP does not involve any approval for reconstruction or change in physical appearance. So that means that the changes that would occur are the activities that will take place during the day, which include things like digging in the sandbox, reading books, swinging in the yard, building with blocks, eating lunch, exploring nature, and chatting with friends. All things that we do in our homes. The children playing there will grow, they will learn, just like any family home. This is not just a business for me, it's something I truly believe in. That is the conclusion of what I want to share, but I also wanted to say that I am hoping to attend a family reunion in Seattle on July 13th and send an authorized agent. Assuming y'all are good with that, this will be the meeting that I am in attendance of.
Thank you. I think we're good with that.
Thank you all.
Go enjoy your family. All right, we're going to keep up with those. Is anybody else here to speak in favor?
My name is Sarah Zimbardi. I will be here in place of Jen Washburn next month, but I did want to say that my daughter has been in attendance at Jen's school for 3 years now and will actually be driving her here next year for kindergarten. And I live in Medlock Park, and we are very sad to see the school go because it really is, everybody in the neighborhood knows about the backyard school, and it's always been a great thing to have in the neighborhood, and everybody thinks very highly of it. So, but we're excited for her and her family to move here to Tucker and all the great things that we've heard about this place here. So
Great, thank you. We have houses for sale here too. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak in favor?
Adjust this guy a little bit. My name is Anna Wood. I live at 2284 Midvale Circle in Tucker, so I am a neighbor around the Horseshoe. I'm a personal friend of Jen's, but also a neighbor, and I am definitely in favor of the daycare coming. On many occasions, I'm just really excited for this to be part of our community. I think that it strengthens. I know many families that are a couple streets over are going to be attending, and I think it's just a really strong part of strengthening the community around the elementary school and then having it feed into Midvale. So that would be a really good plus for our community.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. I'm a parent of a 2.5-year-old here in Tucker. I live in District 2. If y'all have tried to shop for childcare recently, it is not convenient. So I am very excited to see new childcare options in the community. I would love for y'all to promote such activity in the future. I want to be like my favorite mayor, Mayor Zoran, make it free for everyone. But barring that,
Did you just hear how people complain about their taxes? My God. All right, go
I heard.
ahead.
But would love for the council to vote favorably for this.
Thank you. You know, I'm teasing. Anybody else? All right, I'm gonna close that out. Is there anybody here to speak in opposition? All right, seeing none, I'll close that portion out. We'll do questions now. Remember, it is a first read, so let's do questions first. Anybody have questions? Councilwoman Troche?
I'll just comment. Thank you, Miss Washburn, for bringing your successful business here to Tucker, hopefully. My kids who are now adults, they were all in a neighborhood home-based daycare in Nashville, and we still go back to visit her. So she's elderly and, you know, needs help, but we still go back and visit her, and they still remember it. It was not only a great service to the families, it did bring the neighborhood together. When she would have the children out, neighbors that were home would get to know the families. So we actually knew everybody in the neighborhood in addition to her, and they could help. So it's definitely it's more than just a business. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
And, yeah.
All right, anybody else on this end? No, okay. Councilman Schroeder?
Yes, just one clarifying question. I'm involved with Scottsdale Early Learning down the block in Decatur as well. I'm just curious about the number of children you can have, how that is regulated.
Yeah, so Bright from the Start comes by twice a year. So you do your application through the state, and then they keep all childcare practices in regulation. So they would look at your number when they're there and look at your records and who you have enrolled. And their visits are unannounced twice a year. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
You good? Liz? Have a fabulous trip. Safe travels to go
Thank
see your
you.
family, and we'll see you in July. All right. Thank you.
Thank you all
Appreciate
so
you.
much.
All right, we're going to move on to H3. Bonnie?
We have ordinance O 2026-06-10. First read and public hearing of an ordinance for a special land use permit, SLUP-26-00005, to allow additional building height at 4985 La Vista Road for applicant J.W. Tucker LLC.
Okay, this is a first. We have our first SLUP for additional building height in downtown Tucker. This is allowed by a text amendment over a year ago, I think, to allow applicants to request up to 10 feet or 1 story of additional height in our downtown. So this request is for a development that is already under construction. The use is allowed by right. It's townhomes. It's at 4985 La Vista Road, formerly known as Browning Village, and a few other parcels. So here is a map, an aerial of the property while it was under site development. The property is located in the downtown character area of our comprehensive plan, and the properties are all zoned DT3. I believe there were 4 or 5 properties that were bought and assembled. It's now 1 parcel under common development. This is an aerial of the previous development. Again, you see Browning Village, a few ranch houses that had been used commercially, as well as a vacant lot. And then this is a drone image from May 21st. That's very recent, showing all of the site work. You can see that the ground has been stabilized. The bottom layer of the road is in, the curbing and gutter is in, as well as the 2 access points on First Avenue. So again, we're here for a special land use permit for height requirements. That is the only element that is subject to review. Townhouses are allowed by right in the DT3 zoning district. They can be 3 stories or 52 feet tall, whichever is less. That 52 feet does allow for taller floor to ceiling heights of commercial, which is why This development is much shorter, but still complies with the 3 stories. That height regulation applies when you are north of Railroad and west of Burns. So just imagine that on a map. The code does exempt scenery lofts from the overall height requirements as long as it doesn't take up more than 25% of the floor area. So by right, this developer could build a 3.5 story with a scenery loft, so long as it didn't take up the entire top floor. And that's how they intended to build this development. So the applicant obtained their LDP, they began their site work for the 3.5 stories. And then as they started designing the units and looking through potential impacts, decided to come through for the special land use permit process. So with the Georgia sun, they were worried about providing shade for these rooftops, looked at several options of how to do that. Unfortunately, that would exceed the 25%. And so there was a concern about each individual homeowner making their own measures to provide shade, which could be a beer umbrella or a tailgate tent or something of that nature. So they're here asking for that SLUP for the additional story. It ends up only being about a foot taller than what is allowed by right, based on the way that that scenery loft is allowed to be built. They did pause construction to go through this process to see if they could get the additional building height. I wanted to highlight a couple of our plans that talk about housing in downtown Tucker. So our comprehensive plan does say to incorporate a mix of uses, including adding more housing options to downtown. The vision and goals state to allow for increased building heights, especially in the downtown 3 zoning district, to attract higher density mixed use developments. Our downtown master plan also talks about a lack of single family, townhome, or multifamily construction that leaves the key market segments underserved in our downtown. And it says that more housing is needed to support additional retail space. And then our housing study says that many types of housing are needed. Townhomes are the preferred attached housing type based on all the feedback we received. And there is an increasing need for housing for aging families and high lifestyle housing. And so this development is the first housing development in the heart of that DT3 since we've become a city. There was another housing development in DT2, but this is the first housing development in the city's history in DT3. So here's the proposed site plan showing the 58 townhome units. Again, it's bounded by La Vista Road, Fellowship Road, 2nd Street, and 1st Avenue. This is an elevation comparison. On your left is the 3.5 story, and on the right is the full 4 story with sky terrace that provides that covered rooftop deck. You'll see about a foot difference in the overall height. But the one on the right, which is the 4 story, does incorporate more traditional architecture, which they did to allow different massing and setbacks to minimize the appearance of that additional height. This is a rendering of those comparisons. The top is the 3.5 story, the bottom is the 4 story. So you can see more traditional architecture with that full 4 story development. This is a rendering of the views of Browning along 2nd Street. You can see here the units are stepping down as the site works with the natural topography. So while it is the full 4 stories, it's not all in one plane. It does step down as you go south towards the town green. And this is the proposed streetscape along 1st Avenue. You'll see the sides of 2 units as well as the front of 3 units. So this neighborhood meeting was held on March 31st. There were 8 people in attendance. Questions and concerns included the height of the building, fencing, parking, the timeline for construction, the build schedule, and if elevators would be inside the units. I'm happy to report that all of the units will be stubbed for elevator access. So those can be put in as the units are being constructed if a buyer wants one, or later if the occupant needs one later on to age in place. So as this is our first SLUP for additional height, I'll state that a lot of the criteria doesn't really address an additional floor. A lot of things about lot coverage, is the size of the site adequate, are the hours of operation or impact on stormwater different? Those are all going to stay the same, whether it's 3.5 stories or 4. The code does require transitions and incorporation of natural topography to ensure that there is appropriate scaling and massing to make sure the development is appropriate with those adjacent sites. As I stated before, the proposal does align with the natural topography. That's most evident along 2nd Street. And they've also incorporated various architectural features such as porches, dormers, both projecting and recessing to minimize that overall massing along the street. So looking at compatibility of adjacent properties, I'll say that most of those adjacent properties are 1 to 2 stories. There's only one other building in DT3 that is 4 stories, and that's Harside, which is on the other side of DT. La Vista Road, the units are fronting a 5-lane state highway. So pretty large road, not much is concern about compatibility fronting that 5-lane state highway. On Fellowship Road and 2nd Street, the development takes up the entire block face. So there's no other smaller structures on either side to really have a compatibility issue with. The biggest concern is on First Avenue, where the 3 units that we talked about abut a 1-story building. And so that is the biggest concerns for compatibility, and staff is recommending a condition limiting the height of those 3 units to further offset any impact. So again, the full 4-story is not dramatically larger. It's only about 1 foot taller. And the applicant is doing things to minimize the appearance of the extra bulk of that full 4th story. The comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance both call for more protection and architectural control the closer you get to Main Street. So for example, if you're within 200 feet of Main Street, height is limited to 2 stories or 28 feet. This site is approximately 500 feet from the center line of Main along both First Avenue and La Vista Road. So it's substantially further from that area that has more protection that is codified. Again, staff does recommend reducing the height of 3 units to further mitigate any negative shadow impact and creating a softer transition along First Avenue. This is a fun rendering that was created by our staff. Took all the drawings from the architect and the developer and input them into various softwares to try to show the massing and scale of the development in downtown and in relation to our trail and Tuckertown Green. And then another one along First Avenue. So again, showing that concern of the height. I'll state that the applicant can speak to that and the neighboring property support for the development as 4 stories, but staff did make that recommendation just as a way to minimize impact. So providing 4-story townhomes with elevator shafts and sky terraces would provide a unique housing type that does not currently exist in Tucker, and the incorporation of 3 smaller units would introduce multiple price points within the development. So based upon those findings, staff recommends approval with conditions. The conditions include that units 1 through 24 and 28 through 58 be allowed to be up to 4 stories tall and measure up to 50 feet in height as measured from the front door threshold to the highest point of the roof structure. That units 25 to 27 be limited to 2 stories with a 3rd-story sky terrace to provide better height transitions along First Avenue and the adjacent 1-story building. And just conditioning the architecture that's already been submitted and that they incorporate porches, covered patios, entrances, dormers, bay windows, and other projections and recesses to minimize the perceived massing of the units. So this request went to Planning Commission on May 21st, where they did recommend striking reduction of units 25 through 27, recommend striking that condition, which would allow all units to be up to 50 feet in height. And again, another first read with the second read and vote scheduled for July 13th.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing so we can hear from the applicant. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing for those who are here to speak in favor. You want to stop our clock? No, wrong one.
First, it says that's JW Collection on the first. You.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Michelle Horstmeyer. I'm the COO for the JW Collection. We developed the Enclave on La Vista, and so we're very excited to be here building these townhomes now. As Courtney said, we're very close. We obtained the last parcel on Fellowship later. We were able to make that work, and so we're trying to play catch up a little bit and get those going, but we'll be ready to go here in July. So this is the site plan, which you all have seen and are familiar with. This one gives us kind of some color on the different types. So we will have multiple types of townhomes, which will help add to the variety. All of the ones that are on the perimeter that face onto Fellowship, La Vista, Second and First will all face out, and then the others are internal. And we'll definitely dress up the sides of those couple that are facing out onto First Avenue. Courtney showed you all this slide, and it does provide a good visual of how we build. We call it a habitable attic. So we build that fourth floor living space under the roof. So it really is a 3-story home with living space all incorporated within the roof line. Here is a better rendering of some of the homes. Again, they'll step down with the topography, porches at the terrace level, as well as the main level living area. Courtney spoke to this. So our neighbor, Tina, to the right of us there on First, does fully support the neighborhood. We've been working with her since the beginning and supports the 4th floor of the buildings. So this is a floor plan that kind of shows how we work and how the homes will lay out. So the lowest level is your garage. In this particular one, these would be ones that face out onto La Vista and Fellowship, where the terrace level will be underground and you come in from the rear. So then you have your front foyer, all your living space on that level, great room, dining room, kitchen, bedrooms on the 3rd level. So 2 bedrooms there with a large owner suite. And then the top level, you have a guest suite, that media room, and then the all-important Sky Terrace, which is covered. We can flip the Sky Terrace to the back and the bedroom to the front, and the bedroom then is in a dormer under the roof, and the Sky Terrace will be in the back. So depending on which way the views, and again, that's just one more way that our architecture can add variety throughout the neighborhood. This is a visual of this couple of Sky Terraces from some current models that we have. So most people will add the fireplaces, and they really are just great outdoor rooms. People just love this space. And then just, being up high, you don't have yards in townhomes, but this is your meaningful outdoor space. Definitely want it to be shaded. Nope, I went the wrong way, didn't I? Oh, no. So this visual I wanted to show. So to be able to do currently under the zoning with just the 25%, the little red space, the red square you see on the 4th level there, that's what would be allowed. And then the Sky Terrace in the front would be uncovered. And so you have just enough room to get up to the top of the stairs. The elevator would get up there, maybe a little wet bar or something, and then your open Sky Terrace, which in a previous company that I worked for, we did open Sky Terraces. They were not popular. And then you end up, as Courtney talked about, the umbrellas, arbors, I mean, you name it, and they figure out a way to stretch it out, canvases and everything else. So that's my presentation, and I'm here to answer questions.
All right, we're going to continue the public hearings. If you want to, you can just sit up front. All right, anybody else here to speak in favor of the applicant? All right, I'm going to close that out. Is there anybody here speaking in opposition? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close that, and then we will move to questions. No.
I have a few questions. Can you speak to the cost of these, both like the lowest cost and the highest cost in terms of the price point?
We expect to start in the mid sixes. So I'd say 650 to between 650, 670, and then go up to about 800.
And then can you just remind me what the square footage, like the average square footage? is?
The one that we're looking at here at 22 feet wide would be right at 3,200 square feet.
And then in these types of models, what's sort of the like average family size, or household size? that
Yeah,
is-
primarily our buyers are empty nesters. I expect here in this urban environment, we might get some younger couples, but we rarely have children. When we do, it usually is the weekend kids where somebody's, maybe a divorce situation, have kids on weekends kind of thing. But primarily two people.
And then do you foresee, I know you talked about the price point, but I know that when the Enclave was done, it was much, much lower. And now you have over $1 million, it's kind of closer to what you're saying now. And then now you have over $1 million home. So how do you foresee that changing, that cost potentially changing over the next couple of years?
I don't think I don't expect us to be in the $1 million townhome market here in Tucker. We certainly would welcome it. We're happy to accommodate that, but the townhomes can't get much bigger. Whereas with the single family homes, people were finishing out terrace levels. We did have the R70, which was the second phase. And so those lots and homes were bigger. So the homes, I think it was primarily due to that, the size of the homes. Where here, we're going to be a little more limited on being able to make them larger.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll remind everybody we're talking about a fourth story on this. Any other questions? Go ahead.
I have a couple of questions. Thank you. And I was a little bit confused about how the trash receptacles will work, how the garbage will be picked up, using a private.
I want to remind everybody, our zoning conversation tonight is about a fourth story. I know we didn't have this come before us earlier, but if you don't mind answering that, but that doesn't have any relevance on anything we're talking about in the zoning application. It's about this fourth story.
Sure.
But if you want to go ahead and answer that.
Of course. So in our covenants, we require that trash cans be kept in the garages. And then we will hire, typically what we do is I honestly don't know if the cab will service us here. So it'll be part of their water bill, I guess. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay. I know. I mean,
Thank you.
No, trash receptacles are an issue in townhomes, so we do require that they be kept in the garage.
it is. It is. Thank you. Any other questions on this? Councilman Nguyen?
Yeah, for the recommendations from our staff of going down to 2 versus like 3 and 4, is there a major difference in terms of pricing?
Well, certainly it would be a lot smaller, so it would definitely be affected by pricing. 2 stories, we haven't even looked at how that floor plan would work. And that would be less than what we're allowed by right. So I actually don't like that idea. The 3-story and then the 3-story with the living space under the roof are the same height. And then going down to 2 would definitely affect the home. And it would be so significantly different than the rest of the homes that it seems like a little bit of an issue to me.
Okay. And for Courtney, I remember the presentation's not on our packet, but there was a line for 25% coverage of the terrace is what we allowed. Is that correct? Sorry.
Yes, so the code exempts a scenery loft from the height requirement, so long as it's not more than 25% of the rooftop. So a 50% scenery loft would count towards that overall height, but if it was reduced to 25%, it's exempt and we would not measure it, which is how they're allowed to build 3.5 stories by right, so long as it doesn't exceed 25%.
Was there like a vision when the code was written for 25% versus, I don't know, some other?
That was a
Right.
code when we became a city. It was a part of the DeKalb County's code. I think it's just to allow some flexibility and use of rooftops in either residential or commercial buildings.
Good questions. I have a question about planning commission. I apologize, I did not get to watch that on video. What was the discussion around for them to strike staff recommendation?
It was the fact that the neighbor had no opposition, as well as the fact that that neighbor or any other property around there could redevelop by right at a full 3 stories or 52 feet. So again, if that commercial property wanted to rebuild, they could go up to 52 feet by right, not even needing a SLUP if it was commercial. And so redevelopment over time, everything will get taller, and there was not as much concern about a lack of transition.
Okay, that adds good clarity to that too. I appreciate you answering that. All right, anybody else? All right, any discussion?
So I do want to just say, I do think that the price point connects to height. And I think when we were, when we're talking about what we mean by allowing additional height, we need to be really thoughtful about, what different types of housing this really brings into Tucker. So I just want to name that a lot of times when we talk about height, as the community development director even said in the presentation, we're talking about mixed use, we're talking about different types of uses. And so, I think one of the reasons that we had a SLUP versus by right for those additional height pieces is to really think about what is that bringing to the table and what is that bringing to the diversity. So I just want to add, I do think as we think about what type of housing is coming and what value add is coming from the additional height, we should be thinking about that when we talk about the SLUP.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? All right. All right, so we are gonna see you back in July. Thank you for being here. All right, let's move on to H4.
Okay. We have ordinance O 2026-06-11 and ordinance O 2026-06-12. This is a first read and public hearing of an ordinance for a zoning modification, RZ-26-0001, and for a special land use permit, SLUP-26-0002. This is to allow drive-through facility and a concurrent variant, CV 260001, to setback regulations at 4270 Lawrenceville Highway for Rocket Brew.
Thank you. Yes, this application has 3 different requests. So 3 votes, 3 sets of discussion. This is for a 7 brew at 4270 Lawrenceville Highway. The property is currently zoned C1, which is a little bit of an outlier as it's in our downtown character area, but we'll get to the history of the property here in a second. So here you see an aerial of the property. It's developed with a house built in around 1950. Property is zoned C1 and it's in that downtown character area. The dark blue around it is DT3, which is the same zoning as the last special land use permit. Here's an aerial of the site showing that 1950s house at the intersection of Railroad Avenue, Burns Avenue, depending on what map you look at, it's a different road name, Lindburn Drive, and Lawrenceville Highway. So the property was first developed around 1950. In 1990, it was the sole parcel of a DeKalb rezoning that was rezoned the property from R75 to C1. In 2008, before we became a city, DeKalb County enacted the Downtown Tucker Overlay District, and this property was designated in the Village Zone. And in 2016, we incorporated and pulled down zoning powers. And then in 2019, the developer assembled 3 properties for a rezoning and a special land use permit for a mixed-use project with an Arby's drive-through. The Arby's drive-through is on the southern portion of the site, and a commercial strip building was at the northern part at the intersection of Lindburn and Lawrenceville Highway. That site plan is tied to 3 parcels, this one here tonight and 2 others to the south. After that application was submitted for that SLUP for the Arby's, the city initiated a citywide zoning to convert the downtown Tucker overlay to a downtown special zoning district, which is why the property is still C1. It predates that city-initiated zoning. And that application was already in the process, so it was allowed to finish and was not included in the city rezoning. Of course, we've looked at that zoning over the years, but it remains C1 in the downtown character area. So currently, the property is vacant. Ownership has changed, but it's still zoned C1 in the downtown character area. And so there is a read for a modification to the 2019 rezoning and special land use permit. So this is the prior site plan from 2019. Again, you'll see that commercial building right at the corner and the Arby's drive-through on the south side. That drive-through was allowed to be screened by the commercial building and less visible from the main thoroughfare. Lengthy set of conditions attached to both approvals. And this is the survey of the existing conditions. Small house, under 2,000 square feet. Currently has some shared access from Lawrenceville Highway and a firmer curb cut on Lindburn. And then you can kind of get some shared access with the property to the south, depending on how you drive. This is the proposed site plan that was shown at the May 21st Planning Commission meeting. It shows an 897 square foot 7-brew location directly abutting Lindburn with a small pavilion to the west. It also shows the dumpster enclosure situated more to the center of the property. 2 curb cuts are shown, one on Lawrenceville Highway, which is a state route, and one off of Burns Railroad. You'll see the red dashed line is the setback line under C1, allows a pretty limited buildable area. And of course, the setbacks in C1 are drastically different than DT3. So spoke with the applicant about pushing the building closer to a street frontage in order to try to comply with the intent of the downtown character area and the surrounding downtown zoning, which is why they were requesting a concurrent variance. So we've gone through several deferrals and several revisions with this application as the applicant has strived to make the proposal more in line with this unique set of characteristics. So you'll see on the left is the February submittal, which is more of the standard 7-brew. Those materials were changed, more traditional brick colors and accent colors, and that was submitted in April 16th. That's number 2. And then ultimately, we have the proposal that's in front of you tonight, which is number 3. I'll note that these elevations are for a location that they're in the process of developing in Cobb County. And so they are conceptual in terms of the Tucker location. But after getting feedback from staff, they felt that this one was pretty closely met what staff was asking for and when describing the downtown character area. And so this is the current proposal. It's still asking for 2 drive-through lanes. The drive-through canopy would only cover the main drive-through that's closest to the building, and then overhang slightly onto the second drive-through lane to provide cover for the people taking orders. So it's still 2 drive-through lanes, but a smaller massing for the drive-through canopy to make it appear smaller, not as overwhelming given the small size of the principal building. And then these are the elevations. And this is a representation of what the canopy or pavilion could look like. The one that they're proposing for the Tucker location is much smaller, but would still be designed of high quality materials that match the primary building. So this applicant had their neighborhood meeting in December. They had 7 members of the community attend. Questions included the sewer connection, the proposed mural, trespassing, interparcel connectivity, the proximity to another coffee shop with a Starbucks, the width of Railroad Burns, other 7-brew locations in Georgia, and whether the property was being purchased or leased. So in terms of the major modification, this is to change the zoning conditions from 2019. The applicant has deviated from their typical development standards to try and meet the overall intent of the downtown character area, and we feel that it is more in line with that downtown character area. Again, they've positioned the building along Lindburn Drive. They've integrated the accessory cooler into the primary building. You noticed on those earlier designs, they were 2 separate structures. And they've attempted to promote walkability by adding a small covered pavilion for outdoor dining. Because 7-brew locations are typically drive-through only, but they have added a walk-up window and then that pavilion for anyone who wants to walk and sit on site to enjoy their beverage. There is no reasonable economic use as currently zoned, as the approved site plan does require an assemblage that is no longer viable. However, of course, any modification should comply with the overall intent and criteria of the modification. This proposal is substantially different from any other request in the downtown area and any others that we will likely ever see because of that C1 zoning in the downtown character area. This is an outlier on the map that's pretty jarring to see C1 in the middle of DT, but the applicant has strived to try and comply with the overall area. Staff does have a few traffic access and flow concerns regarding the curb cut locations and the potential future interparcel access. The applicant looked at that, and unfortunately, some of the only ways to fix the flow would be to shift the building into the center of the site. So staff has just made a recommended condition that they look to incorporate striping and signage to ensure better access and flow within the interior of the property. And of course, the access on Lawrenceville Highway is subject to GDOT approval. Staff does recommend approval with conditions of the major modification. So that brings us to the SLUP. The drive-throughs in the C1 zoning district, if you recall from earlier, does require a special land use permit. Previously, drive-throughs in the C1 zoning district were allowed by right, but with a prior drive-through text amendment, they do require a SLUP, so we can give special consideration on a case-by-case basis. Staff will state that the size of the site is small for a drive-through, but the proposal does meet the majority of the development standards. They're just not showing the sidewalk as required on Railroad and Burns at this point. Another unusual circumstance with this property in the heart of downtown Tucker is that it's still on septic. There is no sewer to this property or the property to the south, and the developer would have to run approximately 500 feet of sewer in order to redevelop these properties. And that has been an issue with redevelopment over the years, just for the cost of that infrastructure upgrade. In terms of traffic, it's estimated that the use will generate 8 new trips in the AM and 2 new trips in the peak PM. There are additional pass-by trips, but those are trips from cars that are already driving on that route and not necessarily going out of their way or going specifically to this location, maybe just stopping on their way home or on the way to work. There are no speaker boxes with the 7 Brew model. All orders are taken by a human. Imagine that in person, face-to-face, so there's no noise concerns with the proposal. But staff does recommend a mix of evergreen and hardwood trees be planted throughout the site to minimize the appearance of the drive-through lanes. The proposal also complies with the supplemental regulations for drive-through facilities, both in the downtown district and in Article 4 for all other zoning districts. But there is a concern for disproportionate proliferation if approved, as there would be 3 drive-through facilities at this intersection. And again, the request is for a drive-through facility. We don't look at what type of food or beverage is being served inside. We just look at the overall use, which is a drive-through. So while there is a drive-through coffee shop to the north, and this is a drive-through coffee shop, we're not looking at the beverages being served. We're just looking at the drive-through. As a reference before, the applicant has made substantial design changes to more closely align with the downtown. It would allow the redevelopment of a property that's been vacant and underserved with no sewer for 10 years and is substantially different from any other request that we will ever consider. So staff recommends approval with conditions of the special land use permit. Which brings us to the concurrent variance. They're requesting to reduce the setback along Lindburn from 50 feet to 4 feet. The property is relatively flat, but it does have 3 road frontages, which carry large setbacks, which would diminish any buildable space and would force the building to the interior of the site, which would impact any activation of streetscapes. So granting the variance would be inconsistent with C1, but more compatible with the downtown character area and the surrounding downtown properties. Proposal does retain a large setback along Lawrenceville Highway, which does allow with those older developments that predate the code. And the requested variance does appear to meet the intent of the downtown character area, so staff recommends approval if the rezoning and special land use permit are approved. So these are some illustrations showing what those setbacks would look like under C1. So the shaded area represents the buildable area in both the C1 zoning district and the DT3 zoning district. You can see a lot more flexibility with our downtown zoning to place a building on the site. So based upon all of those findings and conclusions, staff is recommending approval of all 3 requests with conditions. referencing approval of the May 1st site plan, reducing the setback along Lindburn to 0 feet, wanted to provide a little flexibility, even though they were only requesting 4 to make any other necessary changes. We require additional glazing, architectural detailing, or public art along Lindburn. We are asking that they add metal canopies above the windows on the elevation facing Lawrenceville Highway and above the walk-up ordering doors windows on the elevation facing Lindburn, just to create more architectural interest and activation. Conditioning the use of board and batten fiber cement siding or horizontal fiber cement siding and a brick water table on all 4 facades of the primary building and the incorporated accessory cooler. Conditioning that the dumpster have a brick enclosure and that the brick of that enclosure match the brick water table on the primary building. And that the roofing material for the primary building and pavilion be a standing seam metal roof as shown in the elevations that were submitted. Also, we're conditioning that the cooler be completely integrated into the primary building so that it appears as one cohesive structure. Proposing that the outdoor dining pavilion utilize the same form and materials as the main building and drive-through canopy. Of course, the development would have to meet all the supplemental regulations for drive-through facilities. They would have to construct a 6-foot sidewalk along Lawrenceville Highway, Lindburn Drive, and Burns Avenue with a 2-foot grass strip located between the curb and the sidewalk. They would have to install all street trees and pedestrian street lighting along all 3 frontages. Also conditioned that the 2 power poles closest to the existing structure be removed and the utilities buried. This was a topic of conversation at Planning Commission, and I'll get to that in a second. The owner developer would be limited to full access on Burns and 1 right-in, right-out driveway on Lawrenceville Highway, of course, subject to GDOT approval. They'd have to plant a mix of evergreen and hardwood trees, shrubs, and ground cover throughout the property to minimize the view of the drive-through lanes. They would have to install adequate striping and signage to maintain safe access and flow into and throughout the development, and that all signage comply with the current regulations of the DT3 zoning district to ensure that signage is also more compatible with surrounding properties versus the zoning of the C1 district. The application went to Planning Commission where they also recommended approval, but with modified staff conditions. The applicant asked that the condition regarding burying the utilities be removed, as that would be very difficult, as not all of the poles and wires solely serve this property. And so they are fine with burying and removing 1 pole, but the other poles they would ask to leave. So these changes reflect that. And since that Planning Commission meeting, I have spoken with the representation of the applicant, and we've discussed a couple other tweaks. These are not reflected in the ordinance before you. For the most part, they're not substantial. The first bullet is that the building canopy for the drive-through shall only fully cover the drive-through lane closest to the primary building, as shown on the site plan, to reduce the overall massing and scale of the structure. That doesn't have to be added. That's referenced on the site plan, but felt that it was good to clearly spell that out for this developer or any future users of the site. And then the other one is that all furnishings within the pavilion shall be a solid color and constructed of a metal or durable composite material, just to ensure that they are substantial and do not deteriorate quickly being exposed to the elements. And the other one addresses the existing condition of the building and requires that the structure be demolished within 90 days of approval, if granted. And then I also spoke with the applicant's attorney about continuing to explore changes to the utility pole condition to see if there's any other alternatives to kind of meet in the middle versus burying all the utilities or leaving all the utilities. And so I know the applicant was looking into that since Planning Commission. So that concludes my presentation.
All right, take a breath. All right, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to open up the public hearing for those who are here to speak in favor. And I see the applicant's attorney is right here. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Baxter Russell. I'm a zoning and land use attorney with the law firm of Dillard Sellers in Atlanta, Georgia. Address is 1776 Peachtree Street for the record. Julie Sellers, my law partner, some of you may know her. She has been the primary attorney on this, but thankfully she has finally decided to take a vacation. So unfortunately, you have the pleasure of having me this evening. But I just want to also thank Director Smith for that great overview and presentation. My goal now is to provide some additional comments on that overview, address any questions that you have, and also just if there are any other issues that maybe I don't have the answer for tonight, that I can understand those from you, and we can work on those in the days moving forward before the second read. So again, it is my pleasure to be here on behalf of my client, Rocket Brew Inc. We are requesting your approval of those 3 different requests, the zoning modification, the conditional use permit or special land use permit, and the variance. Joining me tonight, we do have a member of the Rocket Brew team, Mr. Max Pontrelli. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Rocket Brew. We're both available for any questions that you may have. Also, the property owner team is here. If there are questions for them, given kind of the unique nature of this property and all that it's been through, as you've heard through the years, please feel free to call them up for any questions as well. So starting just, I think, as an overview with what is Rocket Brew and what is our business. Rocket Brew is a franchisee of 7 Brew Coffee Shops. 7 Brew Coffee Shops is a dynamic coffee company offering beverages through what we would say is engaging customer service. Rocket Brew is expanding the 7 Brew reach throughout the metro area, and my client hopes to bring a new store and its coffee products to the great city of Tucker. Hopefully, we can also participate in the Perk Up with Parks program and get involved in that and provide coffee for that as well. So Rocket Brew, my client, not the overall company of 7 Brew, my client Rocket Brew, they have several designated locations and areas where they are seeking to build new stores in the metro Atlanta area. They are a woman-owned small business. Heidi, the CEO, is not Georgia-based, but as we've said, our direct operator, Max, is based here in the metro area. So there's someone boots on the ground for this community when it is needed. Max will be very involved in getting the store open and running and going. And just want to mention also, because I've heard jobs mentioned previously in the presentations this evening, despite the small size of this property and the store, the square footage of the store itself, these stores operate with 70 to 80 employees. So this is a great job generator given the size of this property. If you do a jobs per acre metric, we would be very high on that metric. Thinking though about how our stores operate, got a sample menu. We can come back to this if you have any questions about our offerings. But I want to talk about what we do. So we've heard a little bit about the business itself, but thinking about how we operate, I've just got our site plan pulled up so we can look at that together to think about those operations. So we are a business model based on fast service in very small buildings. We operate very efficiently. We are primarily a drive-through model. That's absolutely true. We do have walk-up windows at this location and other locations as well for our customers. As you heard from Director Smith, a large majority of the traffic for our sites are pass-by traffic. So we are not an independent traffic generator. People do not set out with us as a destination. We are something that accompanies other trips, other reasons they would be out on your streets here in the city. So we do not call ourselves a traffic generator, do not consider ourselves a traffic generator. Our store itself is less than 900 square feet, so a very small store. As we'll look at again in a minute, as was mentioned before, we have added the pavilion design behind our building for those walk-up window customers who want to sit and enjoy their treats. A benefit of the small stores that we have and provide, again, going to the efficiency of our business, is that there are positive trickle-down effects to that small square footage, meaning like we only require 5 parking spaces. So it allows us to have a really efficient use of this property. In addition to those 5 parking spaces, we are proposing bicycle spaces here at this store and all of our stores. Our hours of operation, it's about a 16-hour day for those employees that I mentioned. Well, not all of them because they work in shifts, but the operations typically are 5:30 to 10 p.m. with 11 p.m. hours on the weekends. As you saw on the menu, we offer a variety of hot, cold, frozen drinks. Customization is really the name of the game for us. So we combine a lot of different flavors in our drinks, a lot of different add-ons. Another important feature that was mentioned is we do not have an order window or an order box. If it want to think about something that we relate to is almost like the Chick-fil-A model of the employees with the screens who interact directly with our customers. That is what we do. So we have employees that are in the drive-through lines taking orders. It helps again with our efficiency, our speed, getting people in and out, but also with that personal engagement as well. So we know that this is a market that we want to be in, the city of Tucker. We know that from our market research that there is a demand here for us, despite other drive-throughs or other coffee shops that may be in the area. We've done our work to know this is a place we want to be. And we think that we can really provide a benefit to the city and a benefit to the following I think this business is really generating as we grow in the state of Georgia. Thinking about how to develop this beneficial use in our actual request, I think we'll stop here on the elevations. We'll get to that in just a moment. But I think as Director Smith outlined, this property is really in a unique situation with the zoning that's currently on it, C1, but also with the situation it's in with the conditions requiring this larger commercial development. It really boxes in and traps us in a situation where this independent parcel is not able to be developed. The legal standard for me has no reasonable economic use currently because of the existing zoning conditions on that property. So how do we move forward? How does this property owner, in addition to my client, able to use their property because of this unique situation? Well, with the C1 zoning, the coffee shop is permitted by right. We are requesting the special land use permit from you for our drive-through business. A drive-through was approved for this property back in 2019. So I believe there's certainly some compatibility there, in addition to all the other rationale and reasons that Director Smith mentioned. And then, of course, the zoning modification seeking relief from those conditions. Again, we need relief in order to move forward with development on this property. As it relates to the variance for the setback along Lindbergh, or Lindburn, I want to say Lindbergh, Lindburn, that's really just allowing us to be more compatible with what the city wants to see in its downtown design regulations, bringing us closer to the street so that we can really engage that streetscape, both with the walk-up window as well as the pavilion that we seek to develop. Looking at the design of our buildings, as Courtney mentioned, the client team, Julie, myself, have worked extensively with the city, planning commission, members of the community on different versions, different models of what this building could look like. As Courtney mentioned, this is another design for a store in Cobb County, close to Marietta, but we feel it does capture, and we're presenting it as what we're proposing here for this store. As you can see, the brick water table with the board and batten fiber cement siding really provides an attractive, high-quality product for this property. Again, you can see that would be the Lindburn street side with the walk-up window there. Just two different elevations showing what we propose. But I did want to show you, again, I know Courtney already brought it up, but we've gotten green circled there just to highlight where this pavilion would be and would be in, of course, matching design and architecture with the rest of that building as well. So in closing, of course, reserving any time for rebuttal, but again, available to answer any questions that you all may have. Again, want to say thank you to staff for the overview, for the recommendation of approval. I believe that we've satisfied the city's code as well as the legal criteria for each of these different requests. Also appreciate the recommendation and support that we receive from Planning Commission. I would ask that you approve our requests based on the Planning Commission recommendations, and I'm happy to answer questions about that, but we have real concerns about our ability to move those poles, those power poles. That's a long process that you need to go through with Georgia Power in order to be able to do that. And they also have to approve it. So I'm just concerned again about tying us into another condition that we would need to come back to get removed. So we are proposing that we bury the lines going directly to our use, to our building, but leave the lines that are going to other uses along the frontage, leave those as they are. So again, respectfully request your recommendation or your approval of our application, including all three of those different things, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Joseph, how much time do we have left? All right. Anybody else here to speak in favor? All right, seeing none. Anybody here to speak in opposition? Oh yeah, because I forgot it's 3. So it's 3 times 10 is 30 minutes. I was like, you need to speed up. You're going to get rid of your 10 minutes. All right. We haven't had a Whopper like that in a long time, right? Okay. All right. Anybody here to speak in opposition? All right, seeing none, I'll close that out. I think it's the first read, so we'll just go ahead and do questions in general, but I think for the second read, we'll keep it to major modification, SLUP, and then concurrent variance. All right, okay. Any questions? Councilwoman Troche?
Okay, first of all, I want to thank y'all for all of the additional time that you spent with the conversations and efforts that are based on the fact that this is a challenging property, but it's also a prominent location. So I appreciate everybody, applicant and staff. Thank you very much. Courtney, could you clarify for me? I mean, if you look at this request in a list, it looks like, whoa, this applicant is asking for a lot. But in reality, that anyone who purchased this property would have to do the major modification because that what is currently on it is not going to happen. So
Correct.
okay.
Unless you had all 3 parcels assemblaged and you were able to build the development exactly as it was, any developer would have to go through a major modification to change the approved site plan, which was a condition of zoning.
Got it. And then I know you can't say for sure, but likely with the lot size, a variance would be another common request for this lot, right?
Yes, you would definitely need a concurrent variance if you were going to try and develop towards the intent of the downtown special zoning district instead of the intent of the C1 zoning district.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to keep the impression that there were so many exceptions being asked for. Keep it realistic for this and anybody else who tried it. Courtney, could you please share, if you know it, the current condition of the building that's on the property?
The building is in very poor shape. The windows have been boarded up for about 2 years. There was a code enforcement case on the property, I believe, back in 2024. But there's been several issues with the ownership of the property and who's the responsible party was, et cetera. I won't go into the details, but it's been hard to get the property maintained due to that. And so the condition to demolish the structure within 90 days ensures that this property that is in a state of disrepair would no longer be in that state if this approval is granted.
Got it. I think that's it. I think everything else got answered. Thank you.
Courtney, can you talk about the recommendation for the power pole removal? Is that part of our code to an intent for the downtown area to eventually remove all power poles, bury everything?
That is the intent. It is hard to obtain unless you're doing a pretty major redevelopment of several parcels. It is harder on a smaller site where you might have poles that serve other properties. The hope with this was to remove the pole that's closest to the walk-up ordering door because it is right in front of where that building would be. And so an alternative I discussed with the applicant was to potentially shift that pole on Lindburn further to the west so it wouldn't be in direct conflict with the actual building and that streetscape atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. And this shift was
After Planning Commission.
Okay.
In an attempt to find some type of middle ground.
And then I think you mentioned the cover for the drive-through. Your recommendation or staff's recommendation was to just do only over 1 lane instead of 1.5.
That was something the applicant proposed after we gave feedback about the massing of the drive-through canopy on the Milton store, which covered 2 drive-throughs and just appeared very heavy, especially in relation to such a small primary building. So that's what they did on Sandy Plains to minimize the appearance of the drive-through canopy and make it appear more of an accessory to the primary building. That is reflected on an outline on the site plan, so you don't have to add the clarifying language. We just like to be very clear in our conditions to make sure this developer and any future users are aware that that canopy could not cover both drive-through lanes.
I guess this is for the applicant. Maybe you have some feedback from the employees that work there. Is the cover and for both lanes a necessity? Is it something that they wish they would have, or is this something that we can go kind of either way?
Right. No, the applicant is comfortable not extending the, um, the covering all the way across both lanes. Our only request and clarification is that it's allowed to extend a few feet past the first lane. There's a central aisle area there where employees wait or stand just to provide them some covering in that center area. So we certainly understand the desire to not have that covering appear so large in comparison to the size of the building. And so we're comfortable not having it extend across the second lane. We just asked to make sure, as Director Smith said, that it's very clear that our intent is to have a little bit of space there for that walkway area.
Okay, that's very nice of you. Yeah, all for the employees having some shade out there.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, my microphone won't work. I think this question is for you, but where do the employees park when they're working here? Because I think there's only 5 parking spots. Yeah, how does that work?
That's right. Yeah, the employees find different ways to get to their job, honestly, whether
Okay.
it be taking advantage of the bicycle spaces or, um, ride share, or just finding another nearby place to park that could be street parking or something like that.
Okay. And again, I think this might be a question for Courtney, but either one. So as far as, can you do a little bit of a deep dive as one of the things that kind of concerned me was if GDOT doesn't approve the ingress egress from Lawrenceville Highway. I wonder what that means and what happens if they don't approve. There's issues with that. How do we work that out?
So the applicant can speak about if they've actually consulted with GDOT thus far. The approval would be in general conformance with the site plan. So if there was a modification that was minor based on GDOT approval, it would still be allowed to move forward. Any major changes, such as moving a curb cut to say Lindburn, would require you to go back through for another modification.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I think for Courtney first, can you just refresh my memory? Because I know we had a lot of discussions, but I could not quickly pull this up in the code. Can you just talk about the different drive-through definitions? Because at one point I thought we had a drive-through only establishment distinction from a drive-through restaurant facility.
That was something we looked at with the prior text amendment, but was not something that was incorporated into an adopted version of the code.
Okay, so we ended up with all drive-throughs exactly equal.
Yes, there is no provision for drive-through only with indoor dining or drive-through only, no dining.
And then the other thing, because I know we're really wrestling with the zoning versus the character area. And I definitely understand the design elements that we've been highlighting, but I didn't hear much talking about the character area as it relates to anything besides materials usage. So can you just speak to sort of how your recommendation that it fits within the downtown character area aligns with a drive-through establishment in the downtown character area?
It's not in perfect alignment, and staff really struggled. There's a lot of unique circumstances with this application. but the downtown character area talks about having a mix of uses such as residential, retail and service commercial, office, vertical mixed use, incubator startups, and shared tenant spaces and civic uses. Development strategies include preserving downtown special small town qualities, allowing zero lot line development with buildings with storefront windows along the sidewalk, and implementing streetscape designs that are highly pedestrian oriented with strong walkable connections. So again, they met that zero lot line. They tried to activate the streetscape by abutting the building on Lindburn, and then they added that outdoor pavilion to encourage more walkable connections.
And do you have any concerns about it being a vehicle dominated site and the conflict with walkability?
Again, it's not in perfect alignment with the character area, but there's several criteria for each of the requests. Staff chose to recommend approval.
And then with a follow-up to Councilmember Reese's question about the parking, what is our code right now around employee parking requirements for any businesses?
So restaurant drive-through without seating area for patrons is one minimum of one space for each 250 square feet of floor area. So at just under 1,000 square feet, they meet the requirement with the 5 parking spaces.
Okay, I just heard the applicant say that the employees do not park at those parking spots in answer to Councilmember Reese's question. So I was just clarifying.
So we don't distinguish between employees or customers. It's just a base requirement based on your square footage.
Okay. I had one other question, but I cannot remember. Oh, for the applicant, can you speak to how many downtowns 7 Brew is located in?
I'm thinking. I'm thinking about the ones that I've worked on. Downtown location. I think the opportunity that I've had to work with Max on these sites over the last 2 years have been on these, what I would call these corridors like Lawrenceville Highway. That's the similarity I see between the other sites that we've worked on. So I don't think, again, there's a one-for-one correlation. Yeah.
Thanks.
No problem. If I can also just say one more thing to maybe clarify something that I said earlier. The employees are not prohibited from using those spaces. I just wanted to elaborate that because I was touting how many jobs we create or how many employees we will have during each shift, that not all of those spaces or not all the employees will be parking in those spaces. That's it. Thank you.
All right, Councilwoman Schroeder.
Thank you. And most of my questions really actually were just asked by Councilwoman Weaver. I am a little curious about the parking. I'm sorry, the traffic there. I know that during the presentation, it was really clear that we don't really have an increase because of the business model, except for I'm thinking about when I drive on Lindburn, and even with the traffic coming back around the back of the property, there should be a higher traffic volume at some point. I'm just curious if there's any other research on that or any other, I just feel like it, because that's always been a very cranky intersection for us with people coming and going on the Lawrenceville Highway, across the street to the Kroger and Walmart and so on, and next door with the other shopping area.
So the only thing that's required as part of the special land use permit is a trip generation report. And so that just looks at how many trips this specific use will generate. It does not look at the level of service at an intersection or curb cut. It just looks at that general overall traffic count.
Okay. All right.
I like that term though, cranky intersection. I'm gonna start can you put that in our code? The cranky, I like that.
Public Works would have to monitor any impacts in that cranky intersection and could adjust the signal timing if warranted or if able with GDOT in order to improve any level of service.
Well, I must say that is a smart plan to go back and use the railroad road and back up. I think that's very helpful and could help overall with how things flow there. People will get used to it, I guess. That's one way to put it. Thank you.
Anything from the discussion that happened down there? Councilman, no, don't just be sorry.
Just to clarify that, was that ever part of the plan, one of the plans? I'm sorry, there was a lot of revisions out there to move all access to the rear instead of on Lawrenceville Highway. There's the
No, I don't believe there's ever been a plan that would have all the access at the rear. Pretty sure they're going to want to access on the state route where most of those cars are already traveling.
Okay. Yeah. Again, yeah, I guess all of Councilwoman Schroeder's questions kind of maybe a little weary about, it is right at the light for the entrance. So it seems like there could be a lot of congestion adding to that.
All right, I had somebody email me today to remind me that if it comes up, the yellow house, as it's affectionately called, does not qualify as a historic district because it's been modified so many times over the years, and it does not represent a specific time period. And this was established in 2017 in a study funded by the Tucker Historical Society and the city of Tucker. So just if it comes up, I know it's come up in chatter, but that was from our good friend Matthew Lee, who was the former president of the Tucker Historical Society when he was, before he became the Tucker North Lake CID director. So that was a nice reminder because I know we hear that sometimes.
Yeah, and we have no historic district that would protect it.
Yes, you are correct. Yeah, you are correct. And she's an expert on that stuff. All right, one more.
I was thinking about in the coming months, we're looking at the transportation plan. And I know that part of that plan includes the Revive L29 project. And I was just curious about what that looks like in this area of recommendations, if we're paying attention to that. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there to staff. And since it's our first read, we can take that up at the next meeting, perhaps.
Or a separate time because it doesn't affect zoning, but it's good to
That's true.
put it out in the universe. Put it out in the universe. Everybody heard that? Eric's thinking no more project. Oh. Look at Ishri just looked up and smiled. He's like, yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your time being here tonight, and we'll see you in July. Thank you. All right. I'm losing half of you guys. Do we want to take like a 2-minute break? Okay, so I think can I call a break, Ted? Oh, wait, hold on, Roger. I got a motion. Okay. I'm going to move that we take and I mean a 5-minute break. No more than 5 minutes.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on that motion? All right. All those in favor? Hey, we got to do this legitimately. Come on. All right. Thank You ready? All right, I'm gonna make a motion to reopen our council meeting.
And I'll second that.
All right, everybody in favor of that? All right, don't deny it. All right, very good. We are now at H5. Bonnie, read us in.
We have ordinance O 2026-05-07, second read and public hearing of an ordinance to adopt a budget for fiscal year 2027.
Thank you. This is John or Eric? John?
Yeah.
Okay.
John.
Gonna tag
yeah,
team it?
Yes, ma'am. Eric's the closer.
All right, very good.
Um,
Good choice.
and if you could see the bottom of that, it would say, the last bullet would say June 8th, second read and public hearing adoption. So we've had a very robust budget process, and we've gotten to the end of it. And I'm just going to hit some of the highlights of some of the more recent changes to the budget that city manager working with the finance department recommended to council. So in terms of the changes from the budget workshops, you know that we did locate some funding dollars related to funding for the South Fork Peachtree Creek Greenway. I'm not going to run through all these dollar amounts, but some of this came from the DeKalb Fire Station. Another came from the Downtown Arch. And lastly, we also took some from a sidewalk that we were going to do on Hugh Howell. So that total amount of funding that was reallocated brought us to roughly $1 million for the funding for that South Fork Peachtree Creek Greenway, which is currently going through the design phase. And the current estimate for construction for the first phase of this, the phase that would go from roughly the intersection at Idlewood and Lawrenceville to Cowan Road, is at roughly 1.5 million. And then just some nomenclature changes onto our budget. That's, I believe it's draft 3 that's in front of you in the packet, as it relates to the former Tucker Recreation Center Parking and Pickleball Project, Kofer Pool, and Rosenfeld Pool. We, in terms of now going back to focus in a little bit more on the allocations that we now have for these trail projects per your request, discussion and voting on this budget. We would have this first phase that I just brought up in terms of where it's the connection from basically where the fire station is to the intersection over at Lawrenceville Highway and Idlewood. I guess that would be the southeast corner of Lawrenceville Highway and Main Street, Idlewood. But 3 properties are needed for right of way for that. I already discussed the budget amounts. There is outstanding due diligence in terms of land disturbance permit, in terms of stream buffer that we would need from GDOT and from FEMA. So the earliest that you'd have a bid award on this would be March 27. And the point of these bullets, or what I'm trying to convey to you, is that when it comes to actually allocating the construction dollars for this first phase, it could be that it's at the end of the fiscal year 27 budget, but it's probably more likely that it would be in fiscal year 28. And then in terms of the Tucker North Lake Trail, which we've done a great amount of work on, and Ken's been and his staff have been working very diligently on. We are now looking more specifically at a phase, and I'm working with the folks at ARC to do a first phase that would go from our awesome Tuckertown Green and existing trail in the downtown over to Brockett Road. Now that's obviously a larger construction cost. It involves a bridge that would go over Fellowship Road. And at this point, there has not been right of way that's been acquired. So again, that would certainly be a fiscal year 28 project. And we do need to do some due diligence in terms of the phasing that was originally not presented to our state funding partners. But that is currently something that staff is working on. And then to our 10-year capital improvement plan. I think that we've really come a long way in terms of defining and refining in our capital improvement plan, our balanced capital improvement plan. We've had a lot of good discussion that's come out of our retreats. We've had the ability to modify what's been in this capital improvement plan. And the important component that we want to convey to all the council members is that they have the opportunity to always to amend this future plan, but we're specifically going to be coming back to you after our October retreat to look at the capital improvement plan. And now I believe I'm handing this off to Mr. Cron, our finance director.
Yes. I just have two slides here. Kind of wrap up John's presentation. First one is one change that is in the fiscal year 27's revenue budget. Doesn't change anything on the expense side, but we did receive the supplemental LMIG funds that I mistakenly budgeted in with 27's year, but it was actually allocations for 26. So bottom side, that budget amendment that you approved earlier in the consent agenda has this 534,380 in there, increasing it for 26. Essentially, that was not budgeted in 26 to be spent. It'll carry forward. It'll add up with what is expected for LMIG. The expense line's the exact same. So just reallocating it properly. And then why did you try to slide that for me, John? Thanks. I was just gonna use my arrow. We had a few comments on the fee schedule inside of the ordinance, specifically related to the maintenance tech and the Tuckertown Green at the first read. And here are the changes. These are the only changes we've made to the fee schedule, which are the ones that you as council had brought up. We moved that Tuckertown Green, the stage rental, which obviously same rules that the policy we want to set would not be, it can't be closed. It's got to be open to the public, no ticketed event, all of that good stuff. Changing the rate to 300 an hour in 6 and 12 block hours only, half the price hourly for any of the nonprofits that we partner with. And then the maintenance tech was the other item that was inside of the Tuckertown Green stage. There were comments about would we need that for any other events at any of the other parks, working with Craig and Sarah with the Parks and Rec Department. It would be more for like events and tournaments. So if maybe at Fitzgerald, if there's a tournament, this is a fee more to keep up with like the garbage and any on-site being there to help the tournament or the event through the day. Not so much like those, we had conversations about the pavilion rentals, picking up trash before and after. That's something that current staff can already do. This is more for, hey, we need somebody there at the event for the entire day so that the trash can be kept up with and any other issues that happen throughout any of those events. So this is what we suggested. We talked about a nominal fee for the pavilions, but that's something we should already be doing ourselves. And I'm going to say, if that hasn't been happening, those were comments that it not always happening. We have a new Parks and Rec director, and we can use him to make sure that that is actually happening. And if that is a hardship that we can't handle with the current staffing, we can maybe check that in fiscal year 28 to see if we need to adjust that. So.
And those are our slides for this evening. So if you have any questions, we're excited to move forward.
All right. So I think we'll go ahead and we'll do public hearing and then we will do questions. So let's go ahead. I'm going to open the public hearing for anyone who's here to speak in favor of the fiscal year 2027 budget. All right. I'm going to close that. I'm going to open the hearing for anybody who's here to speak in opposition to that. Remember, we had comments earlier. All right, seeing as no one, I'm going to close that out. And then I'm going to open us up or questions. I had one quick question and then I'll pass it on. 501c3s, that's all or just Tucker based? Because on your fee schedule, it just says 501c3. We had discussed Tucker based 501c3. I'm fine either way. I just want to make sure it's clarified.
Craig, do you know that answer? I would assume we would stick with Tucker based, but
So we had discussed keeping things Tucker-based for the 501c3. I think that's more of a policy issue than a, financial dollars issue.
Okay.
But yeah, that's how the spectrum would fall. The 501c3s, Tucker-based organizations, schools, that kind of thing would be encompassed in that first tier of reservation category.
Okay, so just make sure you guys are clear on your policy. So if a 501c3 outside of Tucker came, they would pay the 300.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that
we
clarification.
could always, you could add, like, amend that line and I can add it in there
Okay.
off of your recommendation on the approval process. And it's just me dropping Tucker into that line, if that is what is needed for that. It'd be a little bit more clear too, so.
Mayor, I think that was the intent when we originally discussed it.
I think it was what was on your slides the first go around too. Okay. Thank you. Eric, just real quick, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you because you came in, you're a new finance director, not new to us, but new finance director. You've put focus on this budget. You've kept all council informed, no side conversations. I know that next year will be even better because you're looking and telling us no more buckets just labeled as North-South Connector, L29, Hugh House Study, right? We're moving towards getting specifics lined up there. But yeah, you've done an amazing job. And I know you said the other day, as soon as it passes, you're going to get ready for next year to make us even better. I want to thank our department heads and staff. You've been asked to be lean on your operating budget so we can move more to capital. So I appreciate that as well. And you're doing too much. We've talked about that. You guys are just, there's a lot on your plates and I really want to thank you for all that you're doing. And then council, I want to thank you. You put in time with 2 retreats, 2 workshops. We're already looking at our other retreat in October. I think we're almost there. We're not quite there, but I think we're getting to that point. I also want to thank you for your leadership because you're learning to say no to folks. You're learning to say, we can't do that here. Maybe we can do this here. And that's a hard skill to develop, but that shows true leadership. And I also want to say thank you because you are moving past district-centric projects and looking at projects as a whole. So I want to thank you for your leadership that you're showing all around. So just everybody just, it's a large process. And I think there's a lot of firsts this time. And I think you've done a good job with that. And I think we're getting better and better and better. And council's asking awesome questions. And I appreciate you sharing those questions with the answers and even on your weekend off. So, all right, so let's move on to questions.
Something that you've heard from me via email before, but I just want to confirm that the process for modifying the CIP is the same as modifying the budget.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's still a resolution. So it's going to be passed by the ordinance. It's one of the exhibits in there. It's kind of more similar to the fee schedule as well, because it's not like the budget itself. But yes, it's just a resolution that we bring back to adjust.
Okay. So we're not just limited to annually, anything like that. Okay, cool. I did want to renew my request for a CIP dashboard.
Yep. I don't know if you saw my response.
I
in the
did.
email.
I did. It helped, not only it helps us effectively manage our time and not bug you, but it helps us just be able to answer constituent questions without having to come to y'all. So cool.
The goal would really that those constituents can look it up themselves as well.
Yeah,
So yes,
exactly.
we did purchase the module 2 months ago. And with this budget process, I'm still learning the module. And once this is all passed, that is going to be one of my focuses to.
Cool. Once you're done answering all of our 10,000 questions.
Yes, absolutely.
I want to make sure on the grant side of things, this was also in an email, that grants that impact CIP will be centrally managed so that we do not lock ourselves in to a project that maybe has turned into something that needs to be prioritized differently.
Yes, so
Okay.
everything is gonna funnel through my office.
Cool.
Before they come up here,
Cool.
making sure that it's in the CIP. It makes sense that we're applying for it, getting those questions of when that money is gonna be available. Does it still match when the CIP is expected to be spending those funds? That's what we're gonna look at before we bring them to you. And then in those conversations, we will be more deliberate in what we're saying to where,
Okay.
hey, this is what our thought process is, and these are the matching, knowing the matching up front and getting all
And
that
how
information out
flexible
front.
it
Yep.
is. Okay, cool. And then I think my last question for now is on the South Fork Peachtree Creek Trail. I don't know if it's a question for you or John. I saw on the presentation, it said the soonest it could start is March. Was that March 2027? Was that with full funding or with the 1 million? In other words, is March the soonest it could start if we found the 1.5, or could anything start in March with just the 1?
So the answer today, if we had the 1.5 already budgeted,
Mm-hmm.
we would not be able to go to bid in March because we are waiting for other
Mm-hmm.
items to be approved by GDOT, FEMA,
Right.
all of those things. We would need to find the $500,000 before we go to bid.
Mm-hmm.
And Ted has said, as long as it's in the CIP, that's where we would like to come back in the fall after the retreat to realign the CIP to find that $500,000 so that we will have it funded for 28, because obviously if it's March and we're going to bid, we're not spending all those monies in 27, right? It's going to roll into 28. So I believe that's why we want to come back after the retreat and get the CIP a little more realigned around that South Fork.
Mm-hmm.
And we could then go to bid in March, but until all of those, it's FEMA and GDOT, I believe, is who we're waiting for. And
Okay. So that's
And
active.
acquisition.
That work is active, looking into that. Okay.
So that was that March date is based upon those approvals
Okay.
versus us having the money available.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I'm questioned out, but I have one question. So assuming that we approve the budget tonight with the CIP, I remember talking with the former finance director, Beverly, about what happens, like why it's important to approve the CIP and all the things that can happen. And I remember one of the things that we did kind of discuss a little bit was grants and the impact of that. Now, I think that really a bigger, maybe perhaps a bigger thing for us is down the road approving the master transportation plan and trails in order and getting that safety action plan in place so we can further go for grants. But once we approve the CIP, what funding, if at all, funding opportunities do we have to go out there with regards to grants? Does it open the door up a little bit? Does it help us? I think if I remember correctly, I think it's something to do with being unified in the, having a direction, I believe is what Beverly and I talked about, having a unified direction and a plan. Does that ring a bell to you and all that? So once we approve the CIP, does it make things a little smoother as far as applying for grants and such?
So yes, it will give staff more direction on what they want to look for in grants. I would have to defer to department heads on all the options that they have for grants. I know you mentioned the safety action plan. I believe that I've heard that would potentially give us more options. So I'm going to always defer to our department heads on their grants that are available. But what this does is we are now looking at year over year when money's available and when we can apply for those grants so that we can map out the costs and make sure we stay within those allocations of each year so that we know that we have money to pay for each project. Because what we're trying to do and what kind of how we built the North Lake when we came out of that one retreat and it was like, this is the most important project. Yes, it's changed a little bit since then, but we didn't plan for that grant money that we went after just yet because that was the most important project. Whether we get the grant money or not, we're going to move forward with that project. So this does give a little bit more direction on what we can apply for, because we don't want to be applying for something that's planned 8 years out, 10 years out, because the matching principle on any of those grants could throw off something where our dollars in the bank will not cover what we're trying to pay for. So just making sure we're being responsible with all the funds that we have and making sure that we're staying above zero and staying above the fund balance that we need to set for our charter of the 3 months and all of that. So
Yeah. I think what I was actually, and thank you for that, but I think what I remember from what Beverly had said was that when you are applying for grants, they are oftentimes they are very competitive. And so when you have a CIP, when you have a formal CIP, maybe even a year or two in, where you kind of have this direction, stated direction, I believe what she was saying. I was kind of looking for confirmation. I probably did not ask you correctly, and I apologize for that. But I think that's what I remember her saying, is that it helps with competitive grants. Would that be a fair statement in your opinion or purview or whatever?
you could, yes. Yeah. I mean, it just kind of depends on the scenario though.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
without specifics, it's kind of hard to answer that specifically, but I do think
No
I mean,
worries. It's just,
at least it's going to have us organized to where we already know what grants we want to go after, and what we apply for will be a little bit, hopefully a little more detailed, and we will be focused on what we're asking for, and it would be easier to be approved of those grants. I don't know about like in the competitive world if it really gives us an advantage because we have a CIP. There's some other funding options, not grants, that a CIP will help us with, but
yeah.
I don't know about getting approved for a grant. I'm sure she's watching right now anyway. 'Cause
I know.
she texted me, so you
Yeah.
can text me that answer and I'll email everybody tomorrow. But
Sure.
See if she
I-
can answer the question
Yeah,
for us.
yeah.
Well,
What she was referencing back then, I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
I'm sure there's some sort of advantage other than really us just being organized and knowing what we're going after ahead of time.
Yeah,
There
I mean,
were-
it makes sense to me. I guess that's the point, is it makes sense to me because some of the grants, planning grants are not quite as competitive, but construction grants and like that. And so it's just another thing to show that you know where you're going, you're committed, you know, to your CIP and all that
Yep,
stuff, I
and
think.
that would be a more of an engineering question where like, are they looking at what we're doing in the future too to give us this grant versus knowing that it's going to be what's in the future is coming? I don't actually know, but I'm not in the decision making on their end of it. So
I think what Eric was saying is that staff is going to say yay or nay on grants because you've got it, what we need in matching and all that, correct? Okay. And I think too, though, to your point, you know, our partners in the community have always come to us to say, this is what we want, right? And we can take a CIP and say, hey, partner, and sit down at the table and say, this is some of our planning for the next few years. And where do you see yourself plugging in and helping us, right? CIDs, I know Main Street Tucker Alliance has talked about that, the Arts Alliance and stuff. So I think it gives them we're coming being proactive with that, you know, so I understand what you were saying. All right. I'm going to go down. Go ahead.
Okay, I know you said questions, but I also want to say thank you. First around laying out our trails plan and being responsive on the phasing and approach that we talked about. And particularly because while I know we haven't adopted the Trails Master Plan yet, like it really does start to help, you know, us kind of the combination of our priorities and the community priorities and kind of shaping that. I had a couple of just like process questions that I wanted to like revisit because I still do understand that we can do things, but just because we can do something in terms of bringing the CIP back or readopting it doesn't mean we will. And I think that that's been behind some of the questions that we've had around process. So, you know, to the point that's been made by several people, like this being our kind of first like statement of council priorities, what we as a body are saying for the next 10 years. can you just sort of reiterate the things that were shared in the different workshops around the approach to FY27 and FY28, and then also what modifications were or were not made in the CIP based on the workshop discussions and briefings versus what were not in terms of how we're looking at the CIP today?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is getting that approved CIP 27, 28, 29, kind of depending on what grant we're going after. We can at least focus on grant money, when they'll be available, when we plan to, or we know we have the funds to match to actually complete that project or that portion of the project, whichever one it is. I will go back to John's presentation for the changes though, because
So, but maybe this is helpful, maybe this, you correct me here on there, but I think on the original retreats, first retreat, we really talked about the Tucker North Lake Trail. And subsequent, second retreat?
yes.
We talked about roles, responsibilities. Second retreat, it was the Tucker North Lake Trail.
Right, but then in the budget workshop, we discussed more about the South Fork, Peachtree Creek.
But I think, that was because from what I heard was we were further along on that trail. I was informed, we were all informed that we were at 50%, or possibly 50% acquisition, and that was not the case. So I think we did switch some focus because we thought, oh yeah, great, like, let's do it. I think we were also told we may not be able to phase. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought we were being pushed to say we need to keep with that GDOT schedule. So we all kind of said, okay, well, Amy, you're shaking your head. Yeah, well, like, let's shift over here then. So that's what I heard, but apparently some of that may or may not be realistic, I'll say, right?
Yes, now I think that's accurate. Maybe something got lost in translation, but yeah, there's certainly phasing that can be done while you're still doing a commitment to the overall project. Go ahead.
Well, so that was me saying I appreciate that. The process question was about what changes was staff willing or not willing to make to the CIP as a result of our budget workshops or not?
Yes, so after the second workshop, we had asked those questions. The first time was the roles, kind of where everyone aligns, who does what. Second one was where we asked those questions was, what projects are your most important? And out of that came the Tucker North Lake. In that same conversation, one of the things that council, most of you said, I don't know if it was every single one, but it was what would you like to see? And it was, let's see projects finished. We want to see it start and we want to see it finish. Tucker North Lake was the #1 project that came out of that. Before the first read, I honestly don't know what the CIP was before that. It was kind of already similar to this, but what our thought process was, you wanted to see the most important project to be done to completion. We slid up Tucker North Lake. Obviously, we knew we didn't slide up. We just focused more money on it. This was before we ever presented to you. And slid back the other trail projects. Obviously, we have allocations as well that we have to stay in line with. Phasing all the way through is going to slow down, drag all of the projects out to, I think it would have been, I don't even know if North Lake would have been finished by the 10th year with available funds if we were to keep it in the phasing how we originally kind of viewed it before we had that second workshop, or workshop. It was workshop, right? Something like that. Whatever. Retreat. There we go. Yeah. So before the first read, that is what kind of changed. The trails were more allocated across the 10 years. I believe South Fork would have been probably finished in like 33. North Lake would have been, I don't even know if we had all of it. I don't know if you remember, Ken, but if it would have even been finished by 36 because of the cost of it and how much money we had each trail project. So my edit coming into the first read was, let's fund this entire project. It's the most important one. We had the workshop scheduled. We did this to move up South Fork. to realign, making maybe two of the same 1A and 1B instead of 1, 2, and 3 kind of thing on our trail list. Other than that, there wasn't many changes. I can say running through this, the 468 from the trailhead parking spaces was something that just went away. It didn't get reallocated anywhere because it was less than what was expected after correspondence with the cab. The 150, I just took the 150, it was in 27. I just replaced it out just to stay balanced throughout the whole year. Put it out in that 34 year.
So what I'm actually trying to get at is what I was told is that staff was not making any substantive changes in terms of specific line items or like that it was shifting funds somewhat, but that you were waiting on direction. I guess this is what Derek said, that staff was waiting on direction from council. And so the changes, the CIP that we have is substantively close to what it was at the end of the second workshop with some, shifts as you're talking about. But that changes were not made you could not make changes without us having the discussion and vote.
Since the first read, we have not made any changes outside of these in the CIP.
Okay. So that was what I was trying to clarify, that there was not an opportunity outside of the discussion we have tonight to make changes. I had one last question about the balance language, because I just wanted to look back at the CIP and kind of understand the comfort level with, I think there's 2 years where we have less than $50,000 fund balance, and we have a 10-year plan that's still ending with like $200,000 in the fund balance, which is not very much. So I would like to kind of speak to just understanding what that, I don't want to use the word risk, but what does that cause? What risk does that put us at to have a fund balance that is that low?
Any large change order that comes up, like we discussed during the workshop, if $1 million unsuitable soil came up for one of our dam projects, we would have to be coming back. That would be one of those scenarios. We're coming back with the CIP to decide what we're actually doing or not doing because we don't have that fund balance. We did have the conversation in the workshop that we want to create a policy to have a fund balance in our capital funds so that we need to work on that. And if you look in the first couple of years, so we have 27, 28, we're at 2.2, 1.6 or 1.5-ish fund balance, where the next couple of years we're okay. But we want to bring that policy back, get it approved by council, and we'll starting in 28, we need to start planning for those fund balances to be all the way throughout the CIP as well.
I thought, so that was the last one. It wasn't. Sorry. My other wanted to see if you could just reiterate some of the things that you've said during this process about how specific we are hoping to get in the future. I know there's still a lot of fairly generic placeholder items in the CIP over the next 10 years, including not necessarily next fiscal year, but the fiscal years after that. So can you just speak to kind of the middle ground that we're at and sort of where you're hoping that we will go in terms of specificity?
Yes, absolutely. And this is really on department heads bringing projects to us with, instead of having and I'm not saying every project needs to be labeled out to start with, because at some point, right, we have a lot of studies that we've kind of cut back on the studies. These master plans come out with new projects. We always have to add new projects. At some point, you'll start seeing like, oh, hey, the master plan has to be updated this year. We might want to allocate money in the future years after that too, because we should be planning usually every 5 years. At that point, when you're that far out, you could probably have a generic like, hey, projects from that master plan. But once that master plan starts getting worked on, before we come back to that fiscal year's CIP, we would like to have actual named projects, and instead of it being generic line items where issues come up with, oh, we're going to come do a design out of that one master plan with these funds that aren't really labeled, and then nobody knows exactly where we're at on that budget anymore, or what projects are being funded out of that amount. So it's something that's just a little more transparent when it comes to projects.
Which that sounds like, to Councilmember Turchi's point, having that dashboard would really give those insights into that. Okay, final question. Because you talked about labels. So I would like to just continue to get more clarity when we talk about what we are seeing when we're looking at the CIP in terms of what's allocated, what's encumbered, and making sure that we're all clear about when things are not, where there are things that are flexible and potentially like fungible and where there are not, and what, I guess, especially as you all are setting the annual budget based on the CIP, that it's clear, again, what things are like, these are earmarked for this to this exact amount versus these are things that we generally are seeing, but we want to be flexible. So I could personally use that because when I'm looking at the numbers, I know those are all in there. Like, I think you have the highlighted yellow, like, oh, these are grants. We have funding. We have to execute on these. We have projects that we're sort of like tied to. We have projects that we're tied to because we've put shovels in the ground and we have to finish them. But then we have other things in there that are like really round numbers. So it's kind of a question / hopefully guidance that we can continue to get really more explicit about what those numbers mean when we're making decisions and staff is making decisions.
And yes, I will be nitpicking department heads moving forward and trying to get as much information out of them as possible, especially for that dashboard and so everyone can see what's going on. It's hard for us to even plan as like the finance director when the information's in someone else's head. I can't. And then you ask me these questions and I'm like, they're guessing right now? I don't know. But I don't want the guesses. I want the actual estimates. So
Excellent points. I saw Courtney shaking her head too about getting very, very defined on that. But a dashboard would help, right? Because then you even sit there and you think, where are we on this one? Where are we? And periodic reviews like we discussed in a work session, right? Here's this, here's where we are, here's where this is moving. I think that is extremely helpful too, because again, there's a lot.
there is.
And you might talk about it one quarter and we forget about it. And then it comes up again for a contract or a poll movement or something. And it's just like, wait, what? Where'd that go? So that's very, very good. And then I do want to clarify that during the first read, we could have asked together as a body to make some changes, but we didn't. We could have given direction just like we did in the workshop, but we didn't hear that from anybody. So that was definitely able to. Go ahead, Karen.
So I just wanted to go back to a couple high level questions and moments real quick. And I'm also a little bit out of questions. I'm really grateful to you for continuing to make sure that the process has been defined and you've managed it well. I just need to stop a minute and ask about the CIP and the full budget. I feel like we have had a track record as a city governing and balancing the budget. And this is a balanced budget, correct?
Yep.
And so when someone comes out in public comments and says we're 10 million off, that concerned me a little because I'm looking at all these documents. I'm like, I don't think that's right. Where is that? One, and two, we have been good fiduciary stewards as mayors and council. Just want to clarify. The overall general operating fund 100 is also balanced.
yes, it must be balanced. Yes. The negative of the, we have 26.5 or 26.6 revenue and 28 point something expenses or 27.9 expenses. In the general fund alone, we have fund balance from previous years that are being used to supplement that 1.5 million deficit. So yes, we are balanced still.
Great, thank you.
Good points on that. Yeah, I didn't know where that number was coming from either. Anything? Councilman Nguyen? All right. Questions? All right. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a motion that we adopt a budget for fiscal year 2027.
Second.
No, I just want to make sure that procedurally, the budget and the CIP and the fee schedule,
2027, because aren't those all part of the budget?
just want to confirm that.
They're all part of the ordinance. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
If it's on there.
Thank you. All right.
Just on the discussion side, I think, like we've been talking about, we we've been making really good progress. I think it's really important that we be really clear as mayor and council for staff what our priorities are. So as I've been hearing our discussion, and I know we've been talking about this, the priority of completing projects, I think, is really, really, really important. Obviously, can't do a lot of things in a year, but I think setting a goal for some time period, I think it's really important that we, keep moving forward. I'm glad we're going to be talking about this in October. But I'm hopeful tonight that we can say, actually, we do want to make sure that by the end of fiscal 29, we are fully funding the South Fork Peachtree Creek Greenway, meaning property acquisition, meaning construction. So not necessarily being able to fully complete, but substantively completing phase 1 by the end of 2029, partially because of the momentum that we have. So I think that that's something that's really important, that we not leave tonight with not having a really solid plan for doing that. I have a motion to make that happen, but I don't know if now's the time or after we do more discussion.
We can do discussion. Discussion. I'm not seeing that amendment. I'm not sure who else has seen it, but anyway, we'll go ahead. Okay. Discussion on the motion. Discussion on the motion. Okay.
So I would like to propose that we move the generic line items that are in the Hugh Howell improvement line items. So there's $1 million in fiscal 28 and 500,000 in fiscal 29 to the South Fork Peachtree Creek Greenway Trail to make sure that we have that fully funded.
I'll second that.
Been an amendment to the original motion that's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on that? Any discussion on that? Go ahead.
Just to clarify, Weaver, it is under Hugh Howell improvements that start in 28, that million. So you want to move that to the South Fork Peachtree Creek. Okay. And is there something else you want to move?
It was that one and the fiscal 29. So my understanding is that that item is a generic line item, like placeholder, and we have other improvements and other investments. And so to me, it seems like we're getting really it's an opportunity to get really specific into making sure that we have South Fork completely funded for phase 1 by the end of fiscal 29.
All right, any other discussion? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think my preferred way to approach that would be through discussions and potential amendment of the CIP, not at this point in time, because those improvements on Hugh Howell, and this isn't just because it's in my district. I've told Councilmember Schroeder before with regard to the 2 roundabouts that I put public safety above a sidewalk or a trail at any time. So I respect your intelligence and your motion, but I'd rather know what that $1,500,000 was scheduled to do in terms of public safety before amending it, the CIP as it currently stands.
All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your passion for the South Fork Peachtree Creek. I know I really respect it and appreciate it. I don't, the conversations that I've had is with regards to the next segment of South Fork Peachtree Creek is that, and Ken, you'll have to correct me, is that we'll need 5 million for that next segment. and it will be, and will not be able to be broken up. Is that correct? So after 1.5 million, then we're going to need another 5 million in a bucket to complete the next segment. Is that correct?
Yes, so the way we have it, in theory, the way we have it broken up is from Lawrenceville Highway to Cowan for phase one, from Cowan to Elmdale is phase two, and from Elmdale to Peters Park is phase three. So you can break it up as small as you want, but those are kind of logical termini.
And to the Elmdale is the $5 million that you.
That middle section, because of the bridges and some other things, is estimated at 5 million. Yeah.
Okay. So here we are. It's the second read. We don't know. Again, we're having discussions about timing and what's going where. I'm not even entirely clear, and probably, Ken, it might be good for you to answer what's going on with that Hugh Howell improvements, because we've had some conversations about it. It'd be good probably for all of us to kind of know where that is. I am happy personally to come together and figure out funding, but to be doing it at 10:10 at night on the second read, you know, I agree with Roger or I'm sorry, Councilmember Orlando, apologize, that having these conversations and coming together and figuring out a path forward with, like, after we come back and do our retreat in October would be great. And I think it seems to me there's time. We have time to figure out a strategy, how to support that project, how to move it forward. I'm just really uncomfortable with having to figure this out. I mean, I was uncomfortable with the first read because I didn't know, I didn't have all the information. I'd been told that South Fork Peachtree Creek was like, we couldn't get federal funding because we'd already gone through the PD process, and, you know, there's no funding for it and all that stuff. So, and then the community, you know, the conversation, the information has gone back and forth in the last month or so. So I would like to propose that we reset, regroup, and come together. I support the project. I want to work with you guys to figure out if we need to pull funding from the Hugh Howell improvements because it's not being used, I will support it. But to be doing this at our second read like this is so much stress, I feel like, on all of us. And we don't actually have to do it this way. We can come together and find a solution together collectively. And I think that would be the better path, personally. Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion?
Okay, I'm going to ask the dumb question. Can I get a reminder of what is in that line item? Because that's another one of those kind of vague ones that we struggled with. So it's $1 million in FY '28 and $500,000 in '29. And I honestly cannot remember what that was supposed to be.
That was a carryover from the previous CIP that we had presented. And if Ken would like to share what his plans are for it, that'd be great. I don't actually know.
Okay.
Yes, so I guess a little over a year ago, we had this Hugh Howell Road corridor safety study done, and with all these projects, there's a lot of projects identified with all the studies. There were a number of projects. And I believe if you add up all the proposed projects, it's like $22 million. And that included, I think, like $7 or $8 million of that was extending the trail. The Hugh Howell Trail. And then there was the intersection improvement at Rosser Road. And there's a potential for kind of a double roundabout there at Silver Hill Road. And then there's a sight distance issue at Kanawha Drive. So what we've done in the proposed budget is fund the remainder of the intersection improvement at Rosser Road. So that's kind of separate. And again, I know we're getting away from these generic categories, so we have not identified specifically what the $1 million and $500,000 is for. So I just named some projects it could be used for. It could be used to extend the trail, to continue that. But the thought would be to go back to councils and again, tell you, here are the options. What is your priority?
I don't want to muddy the waters, but given that those funds don't have a specific project, I wonder if we could compromise on filling in the rest of the 1.5 for South Fork with part of that FY 28 1 million, and just in the spirit of wanting us to talk about big moves like this collaboratively later, we can leave the balance on that line item. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I think I've got a few issues. We might end up doing that. And I think that might be a great compromise. We've not passed the Trails and Transportation Plan. And again, I don't like these generics. I don't like L29 just being L29. We have the north-south connector, right? Like, we have to be super specific, and we've got to align those projects to where things are happening. For instance, when we're building sidewalks, not both sides of the road, getting people over to that sidewalk safely, whether there's a light there, the flashing signals, whatever we do, right? We've got to be really intentional in that. We talked about Montreal, we talked about Moon tying into the trail. You know, we talked about the sidewalks for Idlewood with the roundabouts. How do we get people safely to the side that we want them to cross on? When is the Trails and Transportation Plan coming up to us for that second read? That's August.
August and then September, right? No, July and August.
August
August. We already did one.
adoption.
We did a workshop on, yeah. We didn't do it first. Well, we read it, and then we were very clear about putting time aside for folks to get clarity on it, for us to get clarity, for us to ask questions, for us to meet with staff. And I wanted to make sure that we did that because it was a little overwhelming. So we don't have that. We still have other buckets in there that need to be clarified. The Tucker North Lake Trail, we still don't know about that funding coming in, extra funding coming in from GDOT for that. If that extra funding comes in from GDOT and we have the match, then you talked about moving money over to South Fork.
Yeah, with that being the new priority during that first read that we came up with, where it was really during the delivery, that South Fork was just as important as Tucker North Lake. Yes, that was kind of my plan. Once we get that determination on those grant applications, if we are awarded whatever dollar figure, we funded North Lake for the local paying for it. And then we would obviously keep the match amount there. And then the remaining could go towards South Fork or any other project that we have a priority on, with South Fork being the most.
And that's because GDOT has used dollars previously to help us along. So they just expect to give us more, hopefully, to complete
I
it.
would hope so, yes.
Okay. So a lot of variables there. So I see exactly what you're saying. So I'm going to ask again that we pass tonight, knowing all those variables, get the transportation plan passed, because coming out of that, for that trails, we might use some of that money to make these little connections. Who knows? If we can get that money, move it over to South Fork, and then we can use some of that other money to move to connections. You know, I'm not clear that we are clear on any of that just yet. And then when we have the retreat in October, they know phase one. I don't even care if we don't fund it till we're all off of council for the rest of that 5 million. But getting to Cowan is so important. We've already invested with the fire station, with the trailhead parking, with the redevelopment that needs to take place along there. It is a huge catalyst, maybe even more so than funding it along the creek, which we will. But I'm just saying that first phase is huge. Same thing with getting the first phase of Tucker North Lake to Brockett. It opens it up for more people to use it. You've got people coming from Brockett walking there, from Midvale walking there, from Henderson walking there, and being able to get there. So that's the kind of mindset I'm asking us to be in. But I think we're not getting there tonight. Right? And so I'm just gonna, once again, my discussion item is to ask you to pass fiscal year 2027 as is, and then let's dig into those buckets a little bit more.
So I do want to address some of the comments. Tonight we have in front of us the CIP, and we have a chance to do our job as policymakers, which includes making amendments and changes to things. I don't know what we're going to do in October, and based on recent history, I have concerns about how likely some of those things are to happen if we push them back till October, when I'm hearing fairly clear alignment that we want to figure out how to get to the $1.5 million, 500,000 more dollars, which is a very small amount compared to a lot of the other projects that we have placeholder items for. If we can come back with the CIP and make amendments and adjustments, why would we not do that for things that don't have specificity, and instead tonight focus on the thing that we've set as a priority, which is fully funding the 1.5 million? So like, it applies both ways. If we can come back and say, oh, we're going to fully fund the trail, we can also come back and say, oh, well, other trail projects, maybe we need to change the priorities for. Other things on the safety, pieces we can come back and do. So it applies across the board, but what a number of people have said is that fully funding this trail, fully funding phase one is a priority. And not talking about all the other trails, not talking about phase two. I think there's an argument to be made that you don't actually do phase two next, you do phase three. We're not talking about that. I'm saying this is our first time as a council, as a body, to say, what are our priorities? And we have in the past been told, well, you had an opportunity to vote and state those, and you did or did not. So that is the opportunity we have in front of us. I am amenable to Councilmember Troche's, compromise. For me, it was really trying to figure out, we have 1.4 for the Hugh Howell Rosser project, which is a safety project, which we discussed, which we, in the presentation bumped up. There was a consensus that it was going to be even more, to the tune of $200,000 more. So that's halfway to 500,000. So I was just looking for places that were less specific, that there was a place for us to say, hey, let's get that $500,000 named. So we don't have to do the whole 1.5 million if that makes people uncomfortable. Don't see a list. There's a whole nother in fiscal 2034 and 2035, 3-point-something million for the Hugh Howell Trail. So I don't like hearing, oh, well, this 1.5 could be for the trail when there's another place that's the trail. So all I'm saying is, I don't think it's that hard for us to get to $500,000 tonight, if that's really what we're saying the priority is. And it is my priority, and I think it's some other people's priority.
All right, so I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All right, on that amendment, and then maybe you can make another amendment.
Madam Mayor, can I
Yes.
get the clerk to repeat the motion?
Okay,
Just
so
so we
the
have it.
first motion was the ordinance to adopt the budget for fiscal year 2027. Then there was an amendment. Read your amendment again.
My amendment was to move from the Hugh Howell improvements line. In fiscal 28, there is $1 million. And in fiscal 29, there is $500,000. And to move both of those down to the South Fork Peachtree Greenway Trail in the corresponding years. Or, so I can be more clear, for construction acquisition, but being able to move the project forward for phase one.
Don't we already have money budgeted for acquisition? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we've got that. So that's the amendment there. Yeah.
Eric, does part or all of that request meet your requirements? Because I know it's a bunch of shuffling around.
That would be fine. Yes.
Okay.
We did a little in that email that I sent out today, allocations are a little heavy on the road projects anyway that we're gonna have to conquer in future years before this SPOS is over anyway, so it kind of helps with that, so.
All right. So we've had discussion on that amendment. All right, I'm calling the question. But go ahead.
Okay, I am a little bit confused because are we keeping them in the same fiscal year? Like, it's kind of confusing me because okay, so the question is the 1 million for 28. I was going to look it up real quick because I can't remember which year it was.
1
for.
million for 28.
1 million for 28 and 500,000 for 29.
29 is what was.
So are we keeping those in the same fiscal year? Like, so they would go to a different line item for the same fiscal year?
Same fiscal years that they're in
Yeah,
currently,
okay.
is what it sounded like, yeah.
Okay, so at this time, South Fork Peachtree Creek needs 500. So I was also confused because I thought the slide said we're not even going to get, I swear, I feel like it's like back and forth. I feel like I'm watching a tennis match. It's probably me, but the slides earlier, was it saying we will not, so March is the earliest, the absolute earliest that anything will happen with the trail.
That
South Fork Peachtree Trail.
Expected, obviously.
Expected.
FEMA and GDOT might get their approvals faster than we expect, but that is estimated on what
Okay.
engineering thinks we would have
All
approval
right,
by.
so then possibly we're in the next fiscal year. Potentially. I mean, I know it's hard to predict
If it
that.
takes longer than that, yes, it would push us into 28.
We have $1 million in March to get started on the South Fork Peachtree Creek, basically, if it starts then. And then we come to the next budget season
Yep,
with CIP conversations.
the approved CIP. the
And we still need
expected-
that 1.5 million to do the first segment.
Well, the one,
Theory, like,
that 1 million that's in there now, the 1089 and change
right.
would carry forward. I mean, it doesn't go anywhere. does
Yeah, it would carry forward to
Just like any
28.
other of our project
And then we
budgets.
would look at the CIP and, I mean, I think that's part of the reason why I think keeping the CIP as it is, because even with that going on there, we're looking at next March, even talking like starting this project. So then we're starting in budget season again to talk about it, and we have an opportunity to fund that fully in that fiscal year. In 28 fiscal year, fund it fully with 1.5 million.
Well, we'd only need the 500,000.
Yeah, we only, I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry. That's what I mean, but I don't talk.
Technicalities, the CIP would probably have to have an amendment to it first because we're not going to approve 28's budget until
Okay,
June.
but
Right, where
if we're all
it's brought up.
supporting it and we all want to see this project going forward, we make an amendment to add that 500,000 then in order to get that project fully funded and possibly, and the time thing throws me off a little bit, but 28 could be our year to actually get South Fork Peachtree Creek constructed, right? Like even if we
Yes,
start to March. So the funding you see where I'm trying to go with this is the funding goes in that year, but yet we're talking about putting additional money in and it might not even be needed. I mean, that's kind of been my thing all along is trying to make sure that we are, like you said earlier, getting as much done in the fiscal year that we have and being successful in completion of projects. And, some of the projects are $8 million. So obviously that's going to take more time. But when we're looking at the timing of this project, again, I just wanted to be really clear on what we're talking about here, because if we're talking tonight about moving $500,000, but we can actually have that same conversation next budget season and make an amendment to the CIP and get it done.
Or sooner.
Or sooner.
In the fall when we have that,
Or in the fall.
after the retreat. when
All
we
right,
have
I'm
different
calling the
CIP.
question on that amendment. All those in favor? All right, all those opposed? Okay. That amendment fails. All right. So we're going back to the regular motion, the original motion. All right.
I'd like to make an amendment, or,
You're gonna do a new amendment?
yes.
All right.
I'd like to make an amendment propose an amendment that we move 500,000 from the Hugh Howell Road improvements line item to the South Fork Peachtree Creek Greenway Trail for fiscal year 2028.
I'll second.
Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I just wanted to make sure it was 20.
Yeah, he wanted me to say the right year.
Okay, so I see that it's the same thing, it's just a smaller amount. So same timing, same thing, just a smaller amount. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and call the question on that. All those in favor of the amendment to move, I see Ted looking at me, 500,000 from fiscal year 28 Hugh Howell improvements to fiscal year 28 South Fork Peachtree Creek Trail. All right. Okay, for construction, sorry, for construction. Okay, construction. Thank you, Ted. I appreciate that. All right, this is also why we probably should have had more discussion on this than, second read or briefings or one-offs. All right. All those in favor of that motion? That's 4. Okay. All those opposed? Okay. So that amendment passes. And now I go back to the original motion amended, as amended. All right. So all those in favor of the original motion as amended, raise your hand. We're voting on the budget as amended,
The whole thing.
but budget as amended with,
And the
yeah, with the CIP as amended.
He's scheduled.
5, 6, 7. All right, that's unanimous. Y'all are testing my Robert's rules tonight. Thank God Ted is here. All right, very good. Thank you. Let's all go get a drink. No, we've got 2 more things. All right. 3 more. Sorry, I didn't say that out loud, y'all. Okay, age 6.
We have a resolution R 2026-06-21, public hearing and resolution to create Streetlight District 2026-003 for the property at 5830 East Ponce de Leon Avenue.
All right, good evening, Mayor.
Where'd you
and
come
Council. I was been here all the time. I promise this won't be as difficult or challenging even. Put a lot of light and thought into this. Background on this. City code requires any redevelopment or development of a property to complete street frontage improvements to that corridor. As part of that includes like sidewalks and what we discussed earlier and street lightings and access and things like that. So the property at 5830 East Ponce de Leon is currently under redevelopment, and they're getting close to finishing there, and they're ready to install their lights for that project. And part of that, like I said, is to improve the frontage of the streets. This would improve East Ponce de Leon and Rock Mountain since it's a corner property. This has to be a resolution since it needs to go to the DeKalb County Tax District office for assessment on their tax bill. The tax bill includes all the maintenance and upkeep of the lights. That means the power, if it gets hit or damaged in a storm or any accidents or anything like that, Georgia Power still owns, operates, and maintains the lights. So that is what the upkeep charge is for, and that is a pass-through directly to the property owner for that cost. Again, it has to go to the tax commissioner for collection, and for this particular one, the upkeep cost is $3,780.48 on an annual basis. And the initial cost of $57,695 has already been paid by the applicant to the city. So again, it is a pass-through, but since the infrastructure is on city right-of-way, the city has to enter into that agreement, Georgia Power. So tonight, I am recommending creating this streetlight district R 2026-06-21, also known as Streetlight District 2026-003, 5830 East Ponce de Leon Avenue for this property.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing and then we'll take some questions. All right. I've opened the public hearing it's a public hearing, y'all. Thank you. It's a public hearing. All right. So let's go ahead and let's open the public hearing for all those who are in favor of this resolution. All right. Anyone opposed? Going to open it up for anybody who's here in opposition. Seeing none, I'm going to close that out. Okay. Any questions for Ishri? Remember, we had to do this with the other streetlight districts as well. It has to be a public hearing. All right. I see no questions for Ishri. He does this, he puts it on last. He's smart. I know. I see him smiling. He's giggling. All right. I'm going to go. Can I get a motion?
Making a motion that the council adopt resolution R 2026-06-201 to create streetlight district 2026-003 on East Ponce de Leon Avenue.
A second?
Second, but did you say 201? And maybe I had that wrong. Okay, second, as long as the line item was right.
All right. Any discussion? All right. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? All right, Bonnie, you got 7. Thank you. Let's move on to H7.
Resolution R 2026-06-22, public hearing and resolution to create Streetlight District 2026-002 for the property at 3766 Lawrenceville Highway.
All right, pretty identical to the last item. This one here has a operations and maintenance cost of $1,031.04 per year. And that, again, is for this resolution will allow us to bill that through the Tax Assessor's Office of DeKalb County. The initial cost of $14,705 has already been paid to the city to install those lights. We were waiting on a GDOT permit in this particular case. As of a couple days ago, last Friday, they received the GDOT permit, so Georgia Power will be proceeding to install those lights as soon as we have this resolution passed. Again, for tonight, I am asking for approval of the resolution R 2026-06-22 to create Streetlight District 2026-002, 3766 Lawrenceville Highway.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing for anybody who's here to speak in favor of this resolution. Seeing none, I'm going to close that. I'm going to open up the public hearing for anybody who's here to speak in opposition. Seeing none, I'm going to close that. And can I get a motion?
I'd like to motion to approve resolution R 2026-0622 for a streetlight district 2026-002 for the property at 3766 Lawrenceville Highway.
All right, any discussion on that? Oh, sorry, I need a second. Thank you.
Second the motion.
Excellent. All right, any discussion? All right, seeing no discussion, everybody in favor of the resolution? See 7. Excellent, very good. It passes. Let's move on to I, new business, I1.
Contract CQ 26-03-PO 26-1357, consideration of a contract with KCI Technologies, Inc. for an ADA transition plan strategy.
Hello again. Long time no see. I've got a lengthy presentation here about the need for us to do an ADA transition plan. I'll try to speed it up given the late hour here. But the city has partnered with DeKalb Community Development to get a CDBG grant to create the first section of our ADA transition plan, which is a strategy document. And this strategy document will help us identify all of the elements that we need in an ADA transition plan, the unique needs, goals, and challenges within Tucker, identify all of our existing conditions, identify our assessment tools, look at phasing for how we're going to accomplish such a large and important plan over the next few years, policy development, operational guidance, et cetera. And so the city went out and got a request for quotes for a firm to do the strategy report. And we are recommending that we award a contract to KCI Technologies for an amount of $56,000. 50,000 of that will be covered by our block grant program. So the city will only have to pay at the end 6,000. It is reimbursable, so we'll pay the money up front and then we'll be reimbursed that 50,000. But that is to include the strategy plan as well as 2 ad alternates. So for $56,000, we'll get the full strategy document. We'll also do an online community survey up front to gather initial feedback on ADA concerns specific to Tucker residents. And then we'll also do an initial physical assessment of City Hall and the Tucker Recreation Center. So not only are we doing the strategy, but we're starting with public engagement and we're starting with an initial assessment for $56,000.
I'm just curious. It's just late. I'm just curious, when we get done with this entire kind of report, how will we be able to pay for the changes? Will that have to be added to the CIP?
Yes, I believe we have some money already allocated for an ADA transition plan, but yeah, there is going to be funding requests that come with this document so that we can make these improvements to be sure we are ADA compliant. So placeholder.
Well, and I think some of it could probably be baked into some of the new projects as well. That's the most important piece there. All right, any questions? Questions? Go ahead, comments? Go ahead. Oh, you want to make a motion? Excellent, go ahead.
I'd like to make the motion to approve contract CQ 26-03-PO 26-1357 for a contract with KCI Technologies for the city's ADA transition plan strategy.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, excellent, very good. All right, discussion on that?
I did want to say, I know I've been working and talking with Micah, and he's not here, visible, making sure there's no like other baby situation. But we talked with Micah about this, and then worked with Micah and Courtney to talk through. And so one of the things that I'm excited that the consultant is going to do is that part of the way that the strategy is going to be informed, or the survey is going to be informed, is we are going to have a stakeholder meeting of people with disabilities to help inform the survey strategy, as well as I'm excited to be able to bring some of the things I do at work around disability equity policy to this conversation. And so one of our things that Courtney and I were talking about is that next steps will be to hear from everybody some different constituent recommendations about who can be in that first meeting to sort of talk through like what could be informed by the survey. So the consultants are being very, I think, gracious to come to that. And I'm just really excited about not just sort of meeting the bare minimum around doing an ADA transition plan, but thinking about what we are going to be able to do to be disability forward, disability inclusive. We have so many people we hear from Lois and Peter and Paul's Place all the time. We have so many constituents who have various, disabilities, and I'm just can't say enough how excited I am that we are starting this process in a way that's going to be so meaningful for so many different people in our community.
And I live with one of them, so yes, thank you. All right. All right. Any other discussion? All right, let's go ahead and we've got a motion, we've got a second. All those in favor? All right, that's everybody. Thank you, Bonnie. All right. Remember, we'll have a quick executive session. Mayor and council comments. I just want to say thank you to everybody. Great meeting. We accomplished a lot. I do want to apologize. It's my intent not to have meetings run this long, but the last 2 have, and I think it's because we've got a lot on the budget with public hearings and everything else. I want to thank everybody with their consent agendas, items. I think it's end of fiscal year, beginning of fiscal year, having to get all that stuff lined up. But, moving forward, I hope for us not to have the long nights, but I really do appreciate you guys putting that in, and be safe going home. All right.
Okay. I will keep it short. Staff, finance, everybody, truly, thank you. Appreciate so much your hard work. Derek, if you're out there watching while you're having your best time, he's probably not watching. Maybe he'll go home and watch it. And I also want to thank council because it was tough. It was hard. It was brutal. It's pretty brutal every year, but the last 2 years have been really, really difficult. And, you know, I have said all along, I understand our base is that we are so tight with funding. And that is what has brought us to this situation, and we have to figure things out and prioritize. Nevertheless, I still do appreciate all of you. And there's a saying, we don't have to agree. It doesn't mean we don't love each other and all that stuff. I really appreciate everybody up here and your heart that you put into it, because it was hard. It was really hard. I'm happy it's over, and I'm going camping tomorrow.
It's not that money is tight, it's that we have a lot of projects.
Well, true.
That's
Yeah.
the problem.
This was stated in the public comment, but we don't have a chance to respond until then. But I want to particularly thank the mayor for proclamations acknowledging that we have a full acknowledgement of Pride Month. It was so moving for people at home to see people literally in the audience, like in tears. And I do want to do like a step back to not 2 years ago, but 3 years ago, for everyone on council, moving the non-discrimination ordinance forward. And I know we're not supposed to call that, but that's what's in my head. But I do think that, it is courageous, and I'm really thankful, Mayor, for that, for acknowledging important things for people in our community, specifically as it, kind of connects back to that civility resolution. That was like the first, action you took. So want to say happy Pride to anybody that's watching. And I'm just really excited to see where our community is growing into in this next 10 years.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, we're good. All right, can I get a motion for executive session?
I move to adjourn to executive session for the purposes of real estate, litigation, and personnel.
I second that.
Any discussion on that motion? All right, everybody good? Let's take a vote. All right.